It is Wednesday afternoon, East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Come on in, gather around. Great to have all of you with us again. We've not had Spartan Mag live in about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. We did VCast last night, first time since Ford Field. Prior to that, not many. We've had a lot of health situations going on and other things, and that's kind of cut into our programming. Because we don't have a real deep bench here. We do have a lot of great people that do a lot of great things in terms of helping us with our information and our coverage. Jake Laskawa doing a great job. Jason Killip, as always. Noah Sprunger, constantly. Those guys are great. Paul Konerdijk, great job. Ricardo Cooney, keeping him in the bullpen, doing a great job. It's always great to have Big Mooby around and the rest, and the cast of thousands that are SpartanMag.com subscribers. If you don't know what SpartanMag.com is, go over to SpartanMag.com, give it a try. $1, subscribe for a month. You will love it. Spartan Mag right now, Spartan Mag on the YouTube channel. Give us a like, subscribe to the channel as we continue to move forward with Michigan State coverage of Michigan State football. Big times right now for Michigan State basketball and football. I might need to go get my notes because I'm going to talk basketball here in a minute. But Michigan State football, key time right now in terms of retaining the current roster, looking into the portal for other potential Spartans, and of course, signing day coming up December 20th, I think it is, 2 or 3 weeks. Michigan State's got to get that figured out as the very important process of putting together a roster for next year as Jonathan Smith, Michigan State's new head coach, looks to build and build steadily. I don't want to say slowly, but it's going to take some patience. He said that the day he was introduced. It's going to take some work. They're going to want to be competitive in year one, no question about that, but it's going to take some time. You might remember back in the old days when George Perlis was hired, they talked about a 5-year plan, and that was acceptable back then, 5-year plan. And he had 4 years that were kind of bumpy, 5th year Rose Bowl. Nick Saban, 5-year plan, 4 years, kind of bumpy. 5th year, they went 9-2, and he went to LSU. It takes a while. These days, a lot of people think that it can be a 5-minute plan. The people at Colorado and college football, they thought that Deion Sanders had accomplished that. And a lot of the football pundits nationally were like, man, I don't know, that roster, they're not going to do too well. They went 4-8. They're lucky they didn't go 2-10. Just barely beat Colorado State, barely beat TCU. Somebody else they barely beat. There's a couple games that maybe they could have won also. They did a good job creating a lot of excitement, but in terms of what you have to do in the trenches, they were behind in that regard. And they went into the portal and got a first-round draft pick quarterback pretty much, and then the wide receiver corner, a first-round draft pick. They went in and got big-time talent at a few positions. As Deion said, he was bringing in his own luggage, and it was Louis. Well, they almost went 2-10. The idea that you can do a full-scale transfusion of your roster and immediately be 7-5 or better, very hard to do. First step is contain the players that were on the roster when you arrived. When Mark D'Antonio arrived, there were some decent players and also some middling players that he turned into functional players. But he also had Brian Hoyer, Javon Ringer, and a few other NFL type guys. Right now, Michigan State, some players in the portal, several of them, as you well know, there's about 16 scholarship players in the portal right now. We'll be talking a little bit about them. Michigan State doing what they can to keep more from going into the portal. That is a current situation for Michigan State right now. Anyway, this is called Spartan Mag Live. We invite subscribers, Michigan State fans that are subscribers, over at the Underground Bunker message board to post and post questions here. And we will we'll get into those questions. Also over in the chat area, ask some questions over there, and we will get to those as well. It looks like we are up and running. Question number 1, James from Detroit. He says, a lot of local and national talking heads are penciling in Aiden Childs as a Michigan State lock. Aiden Childs, quarterback, Oregon State, true freshman, split time with DJ Uwe at Oregon State this year. 4.5-star recruit from California. Big-time recruit for Jonathan Smith and the Oregon State Beaver staff last year. Got a little bit of time this year as a true freshman. Splitting time, 6'4", strong arm, athletic, the whole thing. He's not officially into the portal yet. He says, is there actual journalistic evidence of this, or is the buzz simply a result of making a connection because of Smith's presence? That's a question from James in Detroit. Journalistic evidence, yes, there is journalistic evidence that Michigan State is very much involved but they can't officially do it until he's in the portal. But there is evidence that there is interest from Childs and that he's interested in following Smith. That's all that there is at this moment. Until he enters the portal, nothing official can take place. But you can imagine a freshman, his coaches leave. That freshman, a teenager, is going to want to talk to the coaches and say, hey, man, what's going on? Do you want me to come to Michigan State? Do I know for a fact that those conversations have taken place? No, I don't. Can you assume that something like that has happened with a young athlete like that? I would assume so. But journalistic evidence, yes, there's some evidence out there, and we'll wait and see when he gets to the portal what happens from there. But yeah, I think there's a solid chance something like that could develop. Question number 2, Chris from Henderson, Nevada. He says, Comp, care to expand on those rumblings you mentioned a few days ago regarding several Oregon State players heading to East Lansing? Rumblings, just evidence that's out there that some Oregon State people, just like I said with Childs, have expressed interest about what's going on, what's Michigan State like. But anything else in addition to that, you have to be careful about the tampering rules and so forth. But that's out there as you would imagine, just rumblings right now. But I would keep an eye on that as Michigan State builds the roster and as this thing moves forward. Apologize about my voice and how I look and my general, how I always look like crap, but that's the way it is. Come off a couple of weeks, had COVID. I want to wish everybody a very merry COVID in 2023. First time I've had it, never had COVID, so that was an experience. I got run down pretty much the week of Thanksgiving, following the coaching chase as we came down the stretch. We had a lot of coverage as Jonathan Smith, as that became closer and closer. Basically, the articles that we wrote on Saturday, the articles that we posted the moment that he was hired, we had the hiring story with some analysis in there, and also a .comp, my opinion piece on the coverage on the hiring of Jonathan Smith on that Saturday. Those things I posted within 30 minutes of it becoming, within 20 minutes of it becoming official after Michigan State announced it. I wrote those articles Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, 3 days earlier. So I was up all night Wednesday and Thursday. Went to Ford Field on Friday, and I was kind of fighting off what I thought was a cold. Those of you that watched the VCast from Ford Field, the Penn State game, know that my voice was shot that day. I didn't realize it at the time, but then I went way downhill Saturday and Sunday, and got the diagnosis on Sunday after Thanksgiving that it was COVID, and then it was another week and a half. Nothing too bad. Those that have had a really tough bouts with COVID, I've got great sympathy for you and everything that happened in 2020, 2021. I was fortunate enough to avoid it for 4 years. And I was actually kind of proud of that. I was proud that I avoided COVID, but pride comes before the fall. We all know that, right? So I got worn down, didn't sleep enough. The combination of that and not being able to fight it off. I have been using the neti pot since October of 2008. I used to get nasal infections, also known as a common cold. I used to get those all the time until October of 2008 when I bought a neti pot. And from 2008 until 2020, I only had like 1 or 2 colds over a course of 12 years. And I might get something and it would go straight to what would normally be a week-long cold. I would reduce it to maybe a day with the neti pot. And it would be, you'd stave off the sore throat, and then you go into the sneezing stage, runny nose, one day, if you want to call that a cold. Had a couple of those, but the neti pot was undefeated, I used to say. People used to get tired of hearing me say that. Was not undefeated against strep throat. I think I had that in like 2014. And there was another one. But the older I get, the immunity thing, when combined with late nights, not as strong as it used to be. You guys don't want to hear about all that stuff. But anyway, COVID, my kid had COVID twice. My daughter had it once. It's been in my house, but I staved it off. And I think the neti pot had a lot to do with that, along with sleep and vitamin D. That's my guess anyway. This time it caught me. And it was because I'm older and I'm old. I'm an old man. And also I was worn down with no sleep Thanksgiving week. And it tackled me. Now, it never got completely uncomfortable on an uncomfortable level from 1 to 10. It was like a 4, but you get tired and you're tired for several days and your voice doesn't work and all those things. So I appreciate those of you that have reached out to me and with your concern, but other people need more concern than I do. No big deal, but not a very merry COVID for me, but back at it. That's why we've been gone for a few weeks. We've had some other things going on internally that have caused some pause, but we're back at it, and we appreciate everybody waiting with us and subscribing to SpartanMag.com. A lot of SpartanMag subscribers, a lot new ones over at SpartanMag. We appreciate those of you that are new subscribers, and we, of course, appreciate those of you that have been SpartanMag subscribers going all the way back to the late 1990s. And the old school SpartanMag magazine print version going back to the early 1990s. Some of you have been with us the whole time. We appreciate that and appreciate your support. All right, question number 3, Matt from Ionia. He says, you may have answered this already, and I missed it, but there seemed to be conflicting info in regards to Michigan State's current name, image, and likeness structure between you and Big Mooby. Big Mooby, Ron Armstrong, great contributor and confidant, and all-around Michigan State expert. Appreciate it. He's not going to be on the show today. Afternoon show is more difficult for him. I haven't talked to him in a couple of days, but I'll be reaching out to him soon. He says, can you clarify where Michigan State's NIL structure currently stands, and is there a larger vision to unite the different collectives into one entity? Answer, yes, there is a larger vision. I've heard various things going on in terms of different collectives and restructuring and so forth. We know that the Spartan Dogs for Life thing took on some water and they've got some issues, to put it diplomatically, not only externally with fans that are looking to contribute, but also internally with the players. I mean, I've spoken with players and parents of players. I mean, there's questions about, whether, there's a trust factor because of what happened last fall. Let's face it, right? So there's other entities, former players that have put some things together. There's things being done with Spartan Dogs for Life to try to keep that afloat. There's things with This is Sparta and others that are being worked around, and things that are being worked on right now. The post that I did a couple of days ago, that I wasn't blaming anybody and I was not offering any solutions. Like I said in the post, I was just giving a weather report that the weather was not great at that moment for current Michigan State players as they try to figure out what was going on. They've been having meetings and trying to get more answers on things, but it's still being worked on. Like I said, Michigan State had since the Iowa game to get it straightened out. It's not something that the athletic department, rules-wise, can really have a handle on. It has to be third party. So there's some tectonic plates being shifted a little bit third party wise. I think in the future it's going to be really good shape. But as of right now, if you're a player and you want answers right now, there's still a lot of gray area. That's near as I can say. Question 4, Pat in Rochester Hills, Michigan. He says, when Alan Haller spoke with the media, he said several times that this would be the last football coach hire that he makes. Hold on a second. He said he's got 2.5 years left on his contract. Is it simply if Smith does not work out, he's gone, or do you think he leaves regardless? Okay, so when it's a good question there. When Alan Haller was saying this is the last coach he's hiring, it's both of those things. If it does not work out the way it is, if you're an AD, a lot of times you don't get a second hire. For instance, Ron Mason hired John L. Smith. Didn't work out. He was still athletic director when John L. Smith was fired, but Ron Mason did not hire the next coach. I don't know if that was his decision to go hands off or other people or what, but as it turned out, Mark Hollis, who at that time I think was deputy athletic director, it was Hollis and Alan Haller, who worked at DPS at the time, and Tom Izzo. Those three really handled the search, and Luana Simon was in there as well. That ended up with the hiring of Mark D'Antonio. But a lot of times, sometimes you'll get a second hiring if you're an athletic director, if the first one doesn't work out. Maybe Alan Haller doesn't expect that to be the case if that happens here. That's a big if it doesn't work out, but I'm just putting that out there as a possibility. Also, if it does work out, Jonathan Smith, Haller sees, and I would agree with this, that Jonathan Smith is the type that's a long-term program guy, like Mark D'Antonio was. If he has success, he's going to be here long enough that Alan Haller won't be, I don't know if he doesn't see himself being AD way down the road when Jonathan Smith retires someday or what, but I think that's what he means. And I think Haller is optimistic and bullish that Jonathan Smith is going to get traction and be in for the long haul, and he won't ever have to hire another football coach. That's what I took that to mean. Question number 5, Braden in Ada, Michigan. He says, what's going on with Courtney Hawkins' situation? There seems to be conflicting reports out there. Courtney Hawkins, Michigan State's wide receivers coach, former head coach at Flint Beecher High School, Flint native, former Michigan State football player, former NFL player, and a good one. So what's going on with him? I don't know what the conflicting reports are that are out there, but it's my understanding that Courtney Hawkins has interviewed for the wide receivers job. As to why something hasn't happened Officially, I'm not sure. I think Tim Stout reported a couple days ago from Channel 10 here locally that Hawkins and Harlan Barnett would be retained. Harlan Barnett told the players initially after Jonathan Smith was hired that he would be retained in some capacity, and he was still waiting to hear what that capacity is going to be. And I do expect that that's going to happen. Again, in what capacity, we don't know yet. But Hawkins is up for the job. I kind of expected something officially to happen sooner than this, but I've not heard anything in terms of anything having broken down. So I'm still expecting that to be the case. Question number 2 from Braden from Ada. He says, on the topic of wide receivers, do you expect any of them that enter the portal to come back? Of the wide receivers that are in the portal right now, you're talking about Christian Fitzpatrick, Terrell Henry, Jerron Glover. Jerron Glover's from the South. I heard Florida State's in on him. I heard Florida State's also talking to another wide receiver that's not yet in the portal. Trying to. Christian Fitzpatrick, good, solid, big body role player type of guy. I don't know what kind of, what better opportunities might be out there for him. Terrell Henry went into the portal. Guy that had a, decent breakthrough year this year as a sophomore. I think he is a sophomore, right? Roseville kid, Southeast Michigan kid. I've not spoken with any of them or any of their people, but if Hawkins is back, I would expect at least one of those guys to stay. I have a feeling it might be Henry, but Henry's probably getting some options in other regards. But your question, any chance any of those 3 come back? And I would say yes. I'm just an educated guess that maybe one of the 3 would be back. In the meantime, Michigan State's been pretty busy with wide receivers in the portal, which is interesting. All right. Let's go over here to the comments area. Stu Redmond says, hello, everybody. Connor Theo says, hey, Comp, checking in from Chicago. Craig Go Green says, the nightmare season continues. Let's go to 2024. Karen says, hi. It looks cold in Michigan. It is kind of cold. It's like 37 or something like that today. A little bit rainy, which kind of not great. I mean, if it's gonna be December, I want 28 and I want snow so I can do some cross country skiing and some other stuff. The kids aren't little anymore, so sledding is not a thing anymore. I do have a great nephew that I want to get on the slopes at some point. Anyway, Tim Rittinger says, SpartanMag Live is back. Thank you, Tim, for your enthusiasm. He says, checking in from Ypsilanti. Glad that I can finally make it to one of these as it's happening. Karen is checking in from Naples, Florida. Okay, Karen, don't rub it in. You're in Naples, Florida. Good for you. Naples, I think I was there. Let me see here. Sometimes I don't know where I am. I think it was Naples. Check the map here. I know you guys are thinking, man, if you're in Naples and you don't know you're there. Yeah, it was Naples. We had baseball spring training last year in Fort Myers, and we went down to Naples and hung out on the beach a little bit. Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world, no question about that. So, good for you, Karen, and checking in from Naples. Good for you. We're a little bit jealous. 8 Up Driver says, time to talk some football and what's up with our basketball team. All right, basketball. Hold on a second. Let me go check something. We talked basketball last night with Conondike courtside at Breslin, so we talked about that game a little bit. I went through the game again, and of course that game against Wisconsin last night. We'll talk about that in a moment. As far as Michigan State basketball, all right, what Michigan State's 4-4. I mentioned last year at this time they had just lost to Northwestern, and hold on a second here. Trying to hold on. All right, I thought I had some information coming in, but I do not. All right, anyway, Michigan State basketball. Last year when they lost to Northwestern, they fell to 4-4. Actually, 5-4 when they lost to Northwestern in the Big Ten opener. So it happens again. They're 4-4 now, 0-1 in the Big Ten. Man, there's a lot of places. Just good enough to lose right now. They're losing to some pretty good teams. Wisconsin's pretty good. Arizona's very good, very talented. Duke was good on that particular night. They've had some struggles since then. Michigan State's not shooting well. Everybody knows that. That's why they lost to James Madison, having trouble. Michigan State is not an overly physical team. Obviously, they're not a team that's going to pound you inside and do damage in the interior. Not a team that's going to kill you on the board. It's a team that should be good defensively, but the defensive individual focus gets a little bit blurry sometimes. We've seen that with Jaden Akins. Jaden Akins, when he struggles on offense, his defense goes a little bit off. Tyson Walker's been a good defensive player. At times, he gave up a drive layup at one point last night, midway through the second half, that was expensive. But he's got a hip situation. He's been a really good defensive player in the past, but he's had some ailments. Hogard played real well last night. Shot well from deep. 7-2 assist-to-turnover ratio. Defense was good. That's the A.J. Hogard that they need. They've not always gotten that. If they would have gotten that A.J. Hogard against Arizona, they beat Arizona. So it's getting all those things in place at the same time. Like we mentioned last night, like we mentioned in the offseason, they missed Joey Hauser. It reminds me of Michigan State in 1991. 1990, Michigan State had a strong team, was the number one seed, went to the Sweet 16, lost to Georgia Tech, had Steve Smith coming back. Everybody was really excited about that team and everybody that was coming back except for Kirk Mans. Kirk Mans, I realize, is a shooting guard. Joey Hauser's a power forward. But in terms of having a guy that can just stretch a defense and knock down those three-point shots, that's not something that you can just add water, press send, and you've got a new one. They don't have that. So that makes everybody better when you've got someone that can stretch the defense like that. Malik Hall has the ability to be a pretty good stretch four. He can't stretch it and shoot it like Joey Hauser. Can he play defense better than Hauser? Yes, I think he can. Rebounding comes and goes with him. I think Hauser was a more consistent rebounder, but Hall is the guy that needed to step up, and he still may. Last night, he was dealing with the flu. He missed practice on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and they were planning to not play with him on Tuesday. That was the plan Tuesday morning, but then he shows up Tuesday afternoon and says, I think I can go. So Izzo brings him off the bench, plays him about, 23 minutes. Izzo felt that he played him too many minutes, and Malik Hall was involved in a couple of those damaging offensive rebounds that they gave up to Wisconsin that were key in that 12-2 run, which turned a 54-50 game into 62 to 50, I think it was, over a 4-minute span late in the game. All right, so the pieces are still good, but the team cannot be what they hoped it would be in terms of being a top 10 team unless Jaden Akins is, I thought, could be like a second team, all Big Ten type of performer, or third team, at the least honorable mention. Instead, he plays 22 minutes last night and was basically, benched, not making shots, having some trouble on defense, boxing out. There was a big offensive rebound that he allowed that a couple passes later ended up with Krall, the 7-footer, hitting a three-pointer at a key point in the game. I think that was late in the first half, and Izzo just kind of goes like this with Akins, and you go back and watch that play, his shot goes up, and Akins is looking for the ball, but he doesn't do the way Izzo teaches it, which is what you learn in middle school. Shot goes up here, find your guy, go out, make contact, box out, then find the ball. Instead, he just, I've been in practice and heard Izzo say, hit, then find the ball. He just lets the guy have a gap, looking for the ball. His guy gets an offensive rebound, 3 passes later, three-pointer. That was a key run for Wisconsin at the end of the first half. Things like that need to get straightened out. And, Izzo has a theory that if you're not shooting well on offense, if you're not playing well on offense, sometimes those other areas of your game go south. That's something like that where you're not boxing out is something that could and should be fixed today in practice, now and forever. But he's a junior. I guess easier said than done, and it's not all on him, but these are our little loose screws that all of them loose together results in a team just good enough to lose these games. Alan Anderson, the great Alan Anderson, 4 years at Michigan State, successful NBA career. into his senior year, into his fourth year, he was still making mistakes like this. I think he gave up a box out that cost Michigan State a game at Purdue like 2/3 of the way through the season. And he didn't quite get all the screws tightened up until the end of his senior year. And he had a big hand at Michigan State in 05 going to the Final Four, beating Duke and Kentucky in the Sweet 16 and the regional finals to go to the Sweet 16. He was injured in that Kentucky game. Otherwise, I think they might have upset that great North Carolina team. They were leading North Carolina at halftime, I think, without Anderson. Anyway, you look at Jaden Akins right now, shooting 27% from three-point range, 9 out of 33, 27%. Coming into the year, if you tell me Jaden Akins is shooting 27%, I'm like, that would lower the ceiling of potential for the team. If he shoots 27% from three for the remainder of the year, no, this team is not going to be able to get to the Sweet 16. And I said last year, while Michigan State's basketball season was struggling throughout the season, I kept saying this team still has potential to get to the Sweet 16. And once you get to the Sweet 16, Sweet 16 and beyond can happen quickly. And it almost happened for Michigan State. They did get to the Sweet 16, and they beat a very, very good Marquette team to do that. Michigan State beat Marquette in the second round last year. Marquette was one of the top 7 or 8 teams in the country. I mean, UConn won the national title, but a week earlier, Marquette beat UConn in the Big East tournament. Marquette was terrific, and Michigan State had to play an Elite 8 regional final type of performance to win in the second round against Marquette. And there was a bad draw for Marquette to draw Michigan State. Then Kansas State comes out and beats them in the Sweet 16, and that was some whatever. Kansas State deserves it, but I don't know. They played that game 3 times. I think Michigan State beats them twice. That doesn't matter. But you're close to going Sweet 16 and beyond. But that cannot happen if Jaden Akins is a 27% three-point shooter. A.J. Hoggard has never been a good shooter, but last year he was functional. I think he was around 30%, maybe 31% last year, which is that's bonus. That's gravy with everything that he can do when he's on as a facilitator, as a defender. Some bully ball here and there, getting downhill and creating. If he's also just 30% from 3, that's outstanding. Instead, Hoggard's been 21%. Tyson Walker is a guy that should be like a 44% three-point shooter. He's 32%. The Mendoza line is 33%. If you have Walker, Hoggard, and Akins shooting 32, 21, and 27%, and then Malik Hall is your stretch 4, and he's 3 out of 18 for the year, 16%. Excuse me. I mean, you guys know what Michigan State is. They've not shot well, historically bad against James Madison, didn't shoot well against Duke. They were outshot they didn't shoot poorly against Wisconsin, but Wisconsin outshot them from 3. And the rebounding percentage, we talked about it last night. Both teams missed 28 shots last night. And Wisconsin got offensive rebounds on 39% of their misses or 35% of their misses. Michigan State got offensive rebounds on only 17% of the misses. This is a Wisconsin team that historically, when Wisconsin shoots, they're getting 4 guys back on defense to prevent transition. They've been doing that against Michigan State for 20 years. Shot goes up, they just surrender the defensive glass to Michigan State to get back. At some point last night, Wisconsin a few times decided to go to the offensive glass, and they didn't do it with big numbers. Tyler Wall got a couple big offensive rebounds, and one time he's the only guy on the offensive glass, and he pushes Malik Hall under the glass, gets the rebound. Another time, he got the offensive rebound. Wall, the center, the center, got an offensive rebound over Cohen Carr after they took Malik Hall out. You have 6'5" boxing out 7 feet. Kral gets an offensive rebound over Cohen Carr, kicks it back out, and A.J. Storr comes in and drives and hits one off the glass. During that 12-2 run, that pivotal 12-2 run, Wisconsin had 4 offensive rebounds and I think 5 possessions. 4 offensive rebounds and 5 possessions. They didn't score off of every one of them, but they had 2 3-pointers out of those 4 extra possessions. And in total, 8 second chance points on those 4 offensive rebounds, and that was the game. So it's one thing for Michigan State to get beat on the boards. It's another thing to get beat on the boards for offensive rebounds and key moments. It's still another thing to get beat on the boards and key moments by Wisconsin, who historically doesn't even try to go to the offensive glass against Michigan State. You combine that with continued mediocre shooting, Michigan State loses another game. I think Michigan State has a chance to get all their crap together. You got 31 games to get your crap together. But I said coming into the year, I don't know if I posted this officially, but people that I've spoken with, I thought that Michigan State had a real good chance to do everything that everybody thought in the preseason, be a top 5 team and all those things. However, one of the questions would be, do these returning players play like you expect them to play and then some? We've seen seniors at Michigan State have shooting slumps that are kind of unexplainable, unexplainable shooting slumps. Adam Ballinger came into his senior year, stretch 4, had been a really good marksman as a bench player. I think a starter as a junior, and you expect him as a senior to just like go to another level. Instead, he went ice cold and never came out of it, ended up on the bench, ended up late in his senior year, like not part of the playing group. It's kind of like yips in golf. Mental block, Steve Sack, second base. Happened to him, happened to Chris Hill, his senior year. Went to the bench in 2005, and the shooting just never came around. It's happened just a couple of times here and there. I mean, the opposite can happen. Someone like Goran Sutan just gets better and better and better and just like goes great late in his senior year. But coming into this season, I was like, if Malik Hall, if he has an Adam Ballinger type situation, and now Jaden Akins shot real well this summer. I remember hearing reports from preseason practice, man, Akins tore it up today. But Michigan State still has a chance, 31 games, get your crap together, can still be a Sweet 16 team and beyond. Get Tyson Walker healthy. Kohler comes back, plays a role. I'm not sure he's the savior, but last night Michigan State was caught with a depth problem in the front court. Whereas Wisconsin, when Tyler Wall, second foul trouble sits, comes back in early in the second half, bloody nose, sits again. Wisconsin plugs in 6'7", 6'9", 6'10" off the bench, and all those guys just look like clones coming in and did the job. They had depth along the front line when they needed it. Michigan State, Kohler's hurt, Malik Hall's sick, Xavier Booker's not ready, and instantly Michigan State had a front line problem. Started Carson Cooper at the 4, did what he could, didn't quite have great communication on some things, and Sissoko didn't play that great. So instantly Michigan State had depth problems. Wisconsin did not have those depth problems, and they were fine. Wisconsin was a deeper, better team on December 5th. Wisconsin was a very good team last year around December 5th. Started around 11-2. Michigan State beat them in Madison when they were 11-2. And then Wisconsin had some injury problems. Wall became injured. They hit some losing streaks. And as good as they looked early in the year, Wisconsin last year ended up in the NIT. They're an experienced team, a deeper team. As Greg Gard said last night, they're much better than they were last year. However, Wisconsin, with their system and the way they do things, it just seems like they are more inclined to be ahead of the fold on December 5th than other teams. So playing Wisconsin December 5th sometimes is not the greatest time to play them. That being said, they added A.J. Storr, big transfer from St. John's, athletic guy at 6'5", a guard that could post up a little bit, which they love to do at Wisconsin, gives them a splash of athleticism, which they needed. I mean, he's a slop guy. He came into the game like 21% from three-point range. Last night he goes 4 out of 6. Kral had only attempted 5 three-pointers all year, and he shoots a good percentage. But those two guys combined, Kral and Storr, guys that Michigan State was inviting to shoot off the scouting report, those guys go 8 out of 10 from three-point range. Those guys go 8 of 10 from three-point range, and they beat you on the boards, you're going to have a tough time. And that's what happened with Michigan State. Michigan State made a couple runs here and there, but now Michigan State's getting in a situation where they when they're not shooting well, obviously they're not going to win. But it used to be in Izzo's heyday, if they don't shoot well, their defensive rebounding is still going to be strong enough that there's not going to be a problem. Let me see. I think I'll plug in the phone. I'll open up the phone lines. I know a lot of you guys are busy at work, but I'll turn the phones on. normally when we would have a commercial, but we're not that. We're not that advanced here. All right, what do we have? Let me see if I can put this phone number up here. I'll go ahead and post it. In the meantime, make sure to give us a thumbs up, give us a like, and go to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. We'd love to have you over there. There it is. All right. Let's go over here to the comments area. We talked a little basketball. We'll talk a little bit more if you like. But we can talk a little bit more. That's macro stuff. Might talk a little bit more micro about last night's game in a moment. But let's go up here to the comments area. Let me look down here at the bottom, make sure we got no trollers. Who's trolling? We got a trolling at SpartanAG999. Good point. I'm not seeing anything too bad from SpartanAGG999. All right.
Call from
Aiden Wood.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Hold on a second. Got two calls at the same time.
Call from
Aiden Wood.
Mm-hmm.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Aiden, you still there? Aiden, give us a call back. Had a problem there. Sorry about that. Should work in a moment. All right, 8 up driver. Time to talk some football. What's up with our basketball team? All right, so anyway, our starting five: Stu Redmond, Connor Theo, Craig Go Green, and Karen. We got Karen running the point today, fellas. She's going to do a great job with it. Tim Reidinger, he's our 4-man. Connor Theo's down low. Stu Redmond sounds like a shooter. He's our wing shooter. And Craig Go Green, he's our other shooter, hopefully not firing up too many bricks. But I'm sure.
Call from
Jonah Wilson.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
Jonah, you're on the air, SpartanMag.com. How you doing?
Hey, doing good. How about you, Comp?
Great. Where are you calling from, Jonah?
Grand Rapids, Michigan.
All right. Good to have you on the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you have heard any rumblings in regards to the defensive coordinating hire. I know Jimmy Lake's name's been thrown out there as well as Phil Parker. Just wondering if you've heard anything new.
All right, Jonah, thanks for asking. The Phil Parker stuff was being talked about going into last weekend, and I heard that there was some legitimacy to that in some regards. I never verified it, but there was some talk from some people that are semi in the know that something that Parker was listening, but a lot of that was contingent on the outside looking in to Kirk Ferentz possibly retiring at Iowa, and it doesn't look like.
Call from
Aiden Wood.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Aiden, we'll put you on hold for a second. I'm answering a question right now. Thanks for calling in the show. But Jonah,
yeah, no problem. Thank you.
All right, Jonah was just asking about the defensive coordinator situation. Kirk Ferentz, talking to some people that have spoken with some high-ranking boosters at Iowa, it looks like Ferentz is not going to be retiring. If Ferentz had retired, now I say that something could break in the next 2 hours and prove me wrong. I don't know, but there were a lot of indications that Kirk Ferentz might be ready to step down at Iowa. And if that had happened, could that have shaken Phil Parker loose as a possible defensive coordinator candidate? That there was a lot of conjecture on the outside, and I do not know what Jonathan Smith is thinking. A lot of that is war room internal stuff that's being talked about. So I don't know. I've not heard for sure what's going on in that room. But Parker, you would think from the outside looking in, would have been a very interesting candidate if Ferentz had retired, but it hasn't gone any further than that. And as long as Ferentz is not retired, I don't think Parker is realistic at this point. So a lot of that was just outside looking in, conjecture and speculation. As far as Jimmy Lake, I'd heard some things from some other people that he would be under consideration. And then, we put out the hot board at SpartanMag.com, and we mentioned Jimmy Lake among those those candidates. And then there was a report a couple of days ago that Jimmy Lake was probably, I didn't report it, but a report out there that I thought was, I wouldn't refute it at all. I didn't doubt it at all that progress was being made toward Jimmy Lake becoming the guy. But it's been a couple of days, 3 days since then. So I'm thinking that might have been a vetting situation that might be going on internally in case he gets the offer. Because if you're looking at X number of candidates, I think they need to be presented internally and then they have to be vetted by the university. So there might be more than one that are in that process. But it looks like there's indications that Lake is at least in that pool of candidates. But when Michigan State was conducting the football coaching search, I had a lot of inside sources, not inside Michigan State, but inside in the industry around the country, and had pretty good intel as to how things were shaping up, and all the way to how it funneled to Jonathan Smith being the lead candidate. I do not have that type of intel right now in terms of defensive coordinator candidates. I'll just put that out right there. Right now, it's just speculation. Lake is a guy that Jonathan Smith coached with before. When Jonathan Smith was offensive coordinator for Chris Peterson at Washington, Jimmy Lake was co-defensive coordinator at that time. That was around the time that Washington went to the college football playoff, I think in 2016. And then Jonathan Smith took the job at Oregon State, head coaching job. And Jimmy Lake was promoted to sole defensive coordinator at Washington. And then he became the head coach when Chris Peterson retired. Jimmy Lake was head coach for 2 years at Washington. Had some situations there. We've talked about that before. So that's his background. But he has coached with Smith before. A lot of times coaches like to hire people that they've worked with before, and he's certainly in that category. And I don't know how much further it's going to go from here, but you can see why Lake would be a category, and that's some of the rumblings that are out there, but I don't know anything further than that. Let's go to Aiden. Aiden, where are you calling from?
Oh, I'm calling from up here in Houghton right now.
Houghton, Michigan. Great.
Yeah.
So I heard there's 6 inches of snow in Newberry. How much snow is in Houghton right now?
Oh, just like, it's all melting off right now. It's like we got like go skiing for sure.
You broke up there a little bit. What do you have?
Oh, I'm sorry. We got inches here right now.
You're breaking up again. You still there? You still there?
Yeah, I'm bad. No, you hear me now, fine?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I said. It looks like we got like 3 inches out right now, but maybe we'll get a little bit more this weekend. Not a lot. Not a lot.
All right. You ever been to D Stadium in Houghton?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Is that like the oldest indoor hockey rink in the United States, if not North America or something like that? 7th oldest in the world?
So, something of other. It's definitely got an atmosphere in there for sure.
Does Houghton High School? Does Houghton High School? Do they play their home games there? Do you know?
They play their home games in the MAC.
The McInnes?
Where the Tech plays.
Gotcha.
The Tech plays.
All right.
Yeah. So I guess I'm in no way an expert on any of this stuff, but just watching just the basketball, the slow start, it just seems like a lot of it is just some bad luck, really. I mean, obviously we can all see that the skill's all there. Just like last night with the rebounds, like a lot of it was the ball just shoots out right to a Wisconsin guy. We don't even have a guy near the rebound. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I went back and watched those 4 offensive rebounds that were key during that 12-2 run late in the game. And the second one, Tyler Wall just got into Malik Hall and moved him and got that offensive rebound, came back out, and Storr hit a three-pointer. On that three-pointer, by the way, Hall and A.J. Hogard kind of miscommunicated on going under a screen. It looked like they expected Hall to get out on him, but I think Michigan State had changed their coverages to not get out on the three-point shooter. I think it was Storr at that time, who percentage-wise is a guy you invite to shoot because Wisconsin's so good on screen slip, screen roll that Cooper wanted to stay with Wall and not get out on the shooter. And Hogard went under the screen. Storr gets an open three-pointer and has a 4 of 6 night from three-point range. That's a 21% three-point shooter that went 4 of 6 on that night. But that was made possible by the extra possession when Wall moved Hall. That was the second of the 4 offensive rebounds that killed Michigan State late. The third one, Hepburn drives against Trey Holloman. I mean, Holloman's a good defender. Hepburn's an okay player off the dribble, but Holloman's in there to play defense. Akins had been a little bit spotty on defense. Akins has the ability to be a great defensive player, but sometimes it gets a little foggy. Holloman, strong, quick, long arms, been a good defensive player, but on this particular occasion, Hepburn drives on him. And like you say, sometimes the ball just kind of bounces for Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I'm not sure how good they are. I think they're good. They beat a very good Marquette team at home. And last night, going into the game, I'm like, man, as good as Wisconsin played against Marquette, Michigan State has not played well enough in any game all season to beat the Wisconsin team that beat Marquette. And I said that coming into the game, and then not yet. And then Wisconsin came out and played a game similar to the way they played against Marquette with different pieces. When they beat Marquette, Klesmit scored 21 points in the first half. He started the game like 5 of 6 from three-point range. Klesmit didn't do anything offensively in this game. Instead, Krall and Storr were the guys. So they have different guys stepping up and providing that. I'm not sure how good Wisconsin is when they play their B- game, but they're always going to play their A- game in terms of defense, rebounding, and their system and all those things. And then if they get Klesmit scoring 21 points and a half, or Storr and Krall combining to go 8 of 10 from three-point range, you're going to have a hard time beating them. But after that game last night, I was talking about this with Konadike and some other people. I'm like, all right, how good is Wisconsin? They've just won 7 straight. They just beat Marquette.
Right.
Marquette played really well out in the Maui Invitational. I can't remember who they played. They played Kansas and Purdue and played real well. If you asked Marquette, who's better, Wisconsin or Kansas? Might sound crazy, but they played both of them. I think they played Purdue also. The Marquette players, even though it's a rivalry, they might not want to give them credit. They might say Wisconsin's better. If you asked Michigan State players after last night, who's better, Wisconsin or Arizona? Arizona's the number 1 team in the country. And I think some
Wisconsin looks a little better.
And I think some Michigan State players might say Wisconsin's better. Now, that's right now. That doesn't mean Wisconsin's going to remain that good in March as other teams continue to get better. But in terms of 31 games, get your crap together, Wisconsin has their crap together right now. It's kind of early, but they run that swing offense. It's a tricky knuckleball changeup. They got stronger. Those guys are stronger than they look. Like Wall and Krall, those guys, when they box out, they don't look strong, but they just moved Malik Hall out of there. They get like lower than the belt buckle and just move them out of there. And Wisconsin has this way over the years, dating back to Bo Ryan, where they're making contact all the time on you with their body and everything, and it's awkward, but they don't get called for fouls. They've perfected, they've mastered this way of basketball wrestling, where they're not hacking anyone in the arm, but they're getting into you on your jump and knocking you off balance. Like there was this one play that Michigan State had during the 12-2 run. Michigan State had consecutive empty possessions. Both times Fears drove and didn't score. Tyson Walker's on the bench. One time it was Fears drove because they were AJ Hogard was backing down his defender, backing him down, backing down Hepburn. And Hepburn, to his credit, AJ Hogard can usually back down his man. He's strong enough. But he couldn't back Hepburn down. I don't know what those guys don't look like Jim Rowinski, to date myself. They don't look like huge Antonio Smith, burly Eton Thomas, burly muscle men, but they are wiry strong somehow. And Hogard couldn't quite back him down, but as he was backing him down, Wisconsin does a good job of kind of stunting help defenders, not over committing to it, but just kind of showing up and getting back and recover, stunt, recover. And, so Hogard trying to back him down, gets it back to Fears. And because the help defender was stunting, now Fears has an open lane. So Fears takes advantage of that, drives, and Cooper signals for an alley-oop. He throws an alley-oop. And as Cooper jumps, is either Krall or Wall. I think it was Wall. Gets into him and upsets Cooper's leap and is above his belt buckle and just screws up the whole thing, and there's no foul. Yeah. And you look at it, and I guess there was no foul, but they've just mastered this art of basketball wrestling that this is like You're over helping here. Fears drives. Alley-oop it's a dunk against most teams. Wisconsin, they stay contact. They keep their knees bent. And all of that is very, very effective. And that's how Bo Ryan won all those national championships at Wisconsin Whitewater. And he should have beaten Duke for the national championship in 2017 or whatever that was. But they had some bad calls down the stretch that year with Decker and Frank Kaminsky and those guys. Credit to them. They've perfected this basketball wrestling thing where they get you off your leaps, and last night that helped them dominate the boards. There was a couple key possessions right there that showed how. But what were you talking about with Wisconsin?
Well, that was going to be my second thing I was going to say about it. It just seemed like bad luck last night in the beginning. But like you're saying, Wisconsin's just so good making it look like they get fouled, but I guess maybe there wasn't a foul. There was a lot of times last night, just like looking at it right there, there was a lot of calls I thought just maybe State got unlucky with, calls that might have sometimes gone our way. Obviously, you can't use that as an excuse, but that was just like one other little thing that just seemed a little unlucky to me last night, and just not in all the other games, but definitely last night there was a couple calls I thought, at least looking at it once, like there should have been a foul there, and there seemed to be not. And then I guess there was a handful of plays too, like you're talking about, some of those alley-oops that just got shut down, where it looked like as much as we have in bad luck too, there were plays where I don't even know what they were trying to do. It was very sloppy throwing the ball around, I guess, every once in a while.
I'll give you one more
like
on the other rebound. The third of the 4 rebounds. I started talking about this a moment ago, but I didn't finish my thought. Hepburn drives against Trey Holloman. Holloman's in there to shut him down. He gives up a drive. That's the first part of the problem there. Holloman, good player, streaky shooter, tries hard, but scores 59-50 with 5 minutes to go. Can't give up dribble drive penetration right there. Holloman's supposed to be a good defender. He's in there to play defense. Can't allow that. So that creates a crack in the surface, which leads to a domino effect, which ends up being a field goal. So he drives. So now Cooper leaves Krall to help on the driver. So now Krall is available. Hepburn misses the shot, and Wisconsin only has really one guy in the offensive glass at that time, and that's Krall. And Michigan State has been told, defensive rebound. They're killing us on the board. Start rebounding around. You can imagine Izzo during timeouts. Michigan State's got 4 guys in there scrambling for the rebound. Krall kind of keeps it alive. Hepburn's the guy that drove and missed. He's still around. It's a scramble under the rim, and Hepburn comes up with it. That's what you're talking about, some of the bounces. But Krall's just kind of keeping it alive. But the initial part is Trey Holloman getting beat off the dribble. Trey Holloman's a good defender. You can trust him the rest of his career and most nights. But on this particular play, at winning time, 5 minutes to go, cracking the surface, and Wisconsin's smart enough to and it's not like Hepburn is a guy that's always looking to drive. It's just like all of a sudden, boom, I'm driving. And he makes it work. Wisconsin is magical that way. Like, Wisconsin, I don't remember screen roll being a big part of the swing offense of the past. They'll screen and roll, but like last night, they were dishing and getting 2 or 3 buckets out of it. I don't remember the old-fashioned middle school give and go being a part of the Wisconsin offense. Last night, they did it like 3 times, and the one time was when it was 54-50, and I don't know if it was Storr or Blackwell or whatever, one of those guys. They'll feed on the give and go. And you'll see the Wisconsin wrestling, like, I think it was Blackwell, whatever, passes to the pivot. And as he does the give and go, and it's not like they're doing give and go all the time. They just do it once every 8 minutes. And when they do it, everybody's on it. And Wisconsin amazes me because they don't call out plays. It's not like they're going to say, okay, now we're going to do this part of this. Because the swing offense is many different things at many different times. It's not like the same offense every single time. Some parts get repeated, but they do different parts of it without calling it out. And I've been amazed for the last 20 years, how do they all know what they're doing? I'm not seeing any signals. I'm not seeing any call outs. And it's just, I don't know if it's just they just know each other that well. But, okay, feeding the pivot. Now I'm going. It's give and go. And not only is it give and go, he doesn't just go. He does an Olay thing on Akins. Like when he decides to go, he swim moves like a defensive end and doesn't get called for it. And now he's got a body length ahead of Akins. Now he's open. Now he's in there. And 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 I can't remember. I think that one was a layup. There were a couple layups that were. Oh, that was the foul because Akins comes back, tries to block it. They call it for a foul. They showed it in the screen at Breslin, and everybody boos. Guy hits 2 free throws. Now it's 56-50. It's 54-50 at that point, and they execute a give and go. All these little things, and that's how. I mean, Izzo used to have a hard time beating Bo Ryan, and it would always be little things like this, like little different episodes and little puzzle pieces that all go together to Wisconsin beating you. And in the meantime, if you're Michigan State, you better not be getting beat on the offensive glass. And in the meantime, Michigan State better not be getting beat from three-point range 45% to 32% or whatever it was. So all those things added up. Does that mean Michigan State basketball is bad all year?
No, absolutely not.
If Walker and Akins keep shooting like this, yes. But I don't think they're going to keep shooting like this, but they better come out of it at some point. And Malik Hall as well. When you talk about Malik Hall, 16%, Tyson Walker, 32%, Hogard, 21%, Akins, 27%, those 4 starters, you give me those numbers at the beginning of the year, and I'm like, Houston, there's a problem. Unless rebounding and defense are great. And defense has been good here and there, but not locked down great enough all the time to make up for that. So the shooting's got to get better. No new news there.
Oh. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's just another thing. Is just these guys are too good where that can seemingly be this way for the whole season. I am, I have no confidence, looking at the whole long-term marathon of a season that we got going here. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen, and hopefully sooner than later, for sure.
All right, Aiden, anything else?
No, thanks for taking my call.
All right, keep an eye on those Packer fans up there. You're probably a Packer fan, aren't you?
I sure am.
All right, good for you. Good for
yep,
you.
all right.
One of my best friends is from Vulcan, just outside of Norway.
Okay, yeah.
And he lives in Minneapolis now. I went and visited him a couple weeks ago, but he is a Lions fan and grew up a Lions fan up there. And that's tough tough sledding up there for Lions fans over the last 40 years.
Well, it's about you'll get an earful full. It's about 50-50 here, seemingly.
Izzo tells me it's 90-10.
90-10?
Yeah, that's what Izzo says.
It's always seemed pretty close to 50-50 for me, but I guess maybe different towns a little bit different.
All right, man. Aiden, appreciate the call. We're going to move on.
Call from
Caden Karabetsos.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right, Caden, you are on SpartanMag Live. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Great. Where are you calling from?
East Lansing, Michigan.
Great. What's on your mind today?
So I put a couple questions in the comment section. I just don't know if you got to them. I'm trying to study for exams, too.
All right, okay.
Do you think Madi Sissoko's defense outweighs his lack of offense?
You know what? I've seen him in practice where if he's in his rhythm and he has time, he's got a nice jump hook and a decent turnaround jump game, which he didn't have 2 years ago. So he's steadily improving in that area of the game to the point that you don't want to totally abort mission on it. Last night he had an offensive rebound putback jam early in the game off a miss. Other than that, they posted him up midway through late in the first half. Did a couple shuffle dribbles. Wisconsin shot a double team at him on the second dribble, stole it from him, and I think that messed up his rhythm the rest of the game. They tried to post up Hall here and there. What Sissoko gives them is the length and lateral quickness to play defense on ball screens. Ball screen defense, ball screen coverage is an important part of college basketball. And if you can't stop ball screen offense, that's like in football not being able to stop the run. If you can't stop the run in football, it doesn't matter what else you do. You've got a hole in the boat and the boat won't float. In basketball, you have to have lateral movement at the center position, which is something Kohler was working on last year. Didn't quite have it. That's why he didn't play. As good of offensive skill as Kohler has, if you can't play ball screen defense at the other end, you're going to get exploited and the boat's not going to float. So what Sissoko does firstly is play ball screen defense out of the top of the key. Hedge help recover or jam or up and under, up and over, trap, blitz, whatever they want to do, he can do those things. And that's why he's valuable and that's why he's on the court. And ball screen offense from opposing teams, at some point you run into a team that gives you trouble with it. That's not a lot of what Wisconsin does, but that's why he's on the court. And if he gives you any offense that he gives you is gravy. Now, in the meantime, he needs to be better with rebounding. And if he gets to the point where you can get the ball down low to him, Izzo loves to script low post entry pass within the first 3 possessions of a game. They used to do that all the way back to Andre Hudson. That's something that they like to get established. With Sissoko, they've done that. They've scripted that. They've scripted Hall posting up a little bit here and there. Sissoko's not to the point where you can get it down low to him and he's going to hit a turnaround jumper and give you that on a regular basis. So you're right. He's not to that level yet. If he ever gets to that level, then he becomes a borderline plus player. But the first thing that he does is he plays ball screen defense. He's gotten stronger with his upper body, so he can battle a little bit more. He was doing some topside front against Krull a little bit last night in the post because Krull can really do a lot of damage with his low post game. Didn't get a lot of low post touches last night because Sissoko was doing a decent job of topside front. So you'd love for him to be Akeem Olajuwon offensively, and that's never going to happen. But the defense has to come first, and that's why he's on the court, and he's their best option in that regard right now. I mean, there's times when Carson Cooper might be having a better night and might be better with ball screen defense, might be rebounding better on a given night. But those two guys are kind of similar in terms of lateral movement and being able to play some ball screen defense. That does not give you a complete player at that position, but that's why he's playing, and that's why he's the best that they've got at that role available to them at this point. Does that make sense? That's the way I look at it. I mean, you can disagree and you might be right, but that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think you have a really good look on that. My second question was regarding Booker. I know he's top recruit, one of the best Michigan State's had in a while. I'm just worried that if he doesn't get the playing time he's expecting this season, do you think he'll end up sticking around, or do you think he'll try and leave?
No, that's a great question. And you may have noticed going all the way back to media day that Izzo always had a lot of compliments for Xavier Booker. And yeah, that's part from what you're talking about. That's to appease the cooks in the kitchen, back home that, hey, we love him. He's coming around. And then like when there were struggles against Georgia Southern, when Izzo said, hey man, we got Big Ten games coming up, that playing group's going to shrink. He's saying that to let people know that means Booker, didn't play well enough tonight. Izzo always says players determine their own playing time. And if they're playing well in practice, playing well in games, they'll get more playing time. And Booker's just not there. And I've said it on the show, and we said it at SpartanMag.com 18 months ago, and I posted about this late last night about Booker. I got a lot of respect for Booker as a kid. He's trying hard in practice. He's coachable. It's my understanding that his parents are fine with that too. They know that he needs a lot of work. But to your point, at some point, there's going to be people saying, hey man, this guy was a 5-star, number 9 player in the country. He needs to transfer somewhere else, get some playing time. And that's going to be in his head and in his ear. People are going to say that. What they don't realize is what I was saying 18 months ago, that he is not as good as his ranking. Nothing against the young man. He did not ask to be ranked the number 1 high school player in the country. At one point, he was number 1. Konadike went and watched him play. I saw him play on the grassroots level. I'm like, man, he's got a long way to go. Now, last year's recruiting class from top to bottom throughout the entire country was not as good as it normally is. So you had guys that were ranked in the top 10 that might have been top 40 in other years, and that puts him in that category also. What I wrote and mentioned several times is, those of you that are Michigan State or college basketball fans, when you think about a top 10 5-star recruit who's 6'9", 6'10", most recently you're thinking about people like Paulo Banchero, who was really good at Duke. I'm like, do not expect Xavier Booker to come in and have an impact like Paulo Banchero. Not even close. Have patience with him. He didn't ask to be ranked that high. It's not his fault. He's working on it. I went to practice a lot this preseason, and he is so much better. Booker is so much better right now than he was 8 months ago. I mean, he's bending his knees on the weak side. He's reacting. Now, he does have a real nice straight line athletic stride, and I've seen him in practice play ball screen defense. He can cover ground and move laterally. That's going to give him a chance to do some things later in his future as a basketball player. Everybody knows he's been a good shooter, pretty good shooter in the grassroots level. He's got a nice shot release, decent range. That being said, he can make some shots here and there, and you've seen him make some threes at some Michigan State games. But if he were getting like a healthy dose of 3-pointers, like 5 shots a game, I'm not sure he'd be shooting more than 20, making more than 20% of them. He's got a better shot release than Marcus Bingham did, but Marcus Bingham tried to become a shooter and never became better than a 25% three-point shooter. And if you're not better than a 25% three-point shooter, you're unproductive and you shouldn't be shooting those shots. Junior year, Xavier Tillman tried a few three-pointers early in the year, didn't make enough, and he said, okay, I'm not doing that the rest of the year. Izzo's like, yeah, we don't need that. We've got other things we can do. And, Tillman's kept working on it, and as an NBA player now has a decent face-up shot. But that year in those 30 games, Tillman worked on it, didn't quite get the green light. Others, Suton, Adrian Payne, Draymond Green, late in their careers got more and more of a green light to shoot from range. Booker has to be able to do that at some point because the rest of his game is lacking. But just in terms of knowing where to be, again, good kid, he's trying. But the best I can describe it is in basketball, he's just like always late. He's late to get a body on somebody. He's late to jump, defensive rebound. He's late to move late, and he's getting bumped around. He's getting bumped over like a bowling pin all over the place. But he's put on a little bit of weight, and he's trying. His attitude seems good. And as limited as he looks, if you watch him play right now, he's so much better than he was last February and March. And Conan Dyke and I wrote about this 18 months ago and again 12 months ago and again 6 months ago. We toned it down in the previous 12 months. But if you're subscribed to SpartanMag.com, you know that we came out summer of 2022 and said what I'm saying now. Do not expect him to be anything better than Marcus Bingham right away. Different style of player. And our own subscribers at SpartanMag.com destroyed us. They came after us and told us we were drunk. Told us this guy's ranked this high. You guys don't know what you're watching. Watch his highlight films. He's dunking. He's hitting three-pointers. Those are highlight films. I mean, I could put together a highlight film to make Tum Tum Nairn look like Steph Curry, almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, nothing against Booker, but we here on this show and other times we caution Michigan State fans to have patience with Booker. It's going to take a long time. But to your point, you don't dispute that. You're wondering whether he might be liable to transfer out because he's not getting this playing time. And you're exactly right.
Correct.
You're exactly right. That is a factor. And I think some of Izzo's public statements are trying to quell that a little bit. Hey, we love Booker. He's doing a great job, whatever. He's got whatever. And then he says, hey, man, our playing group is going to shrink for Big Ten games. He's saying that for the exact thing that you're talking about. I don't know the inside cooks in the kitchen, what might be going on, but in this day and age of transfer portal madness, yes, I would think that is something that they've got to be concerned about and play some portal defense. But it could be a situation. And right now, if he goes somewhere else next year, I'm not sure how much better he's going to be right away. It's a long-term project. He's a project. He's got some athletic ability. He's got some positives, and among those is a good attitude, and he needs to keep that and keep working. But you raise a good question, and I don't know the answer.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
All right, man. I got a question for you. I just saw your photo over here in the comments area. You're playing baseball there, right? Is that you?
Okay, that's from baseball.
What's that?
But yeah,
that's what?
That's a picture from high school baseball. I just never changed it.
That's great. Where did you play high school baseball?
Southeastern Michigan, Addison High School. I graduated with about 50 people, so you've probably never heard of it.
Addison.
But it's right around Irish Hills area where the Speedway is.
Jackson? Around Jackson?
Yeah, in between Jackson and Adrian.
Irish Hills. Yeah, I know where that is. Great, man. Well, Aiden, thanks or Caden, actually, from East Lansing. You got finals next week? What's going to be your toughest final?
Yep. It's my last semester. I graduate December 16th, so I don't have too many tough finals, but I have a sports geography one. That's about my only relatively hard one.
Sports geography?
Yep.
Makes it sound like it's going to be an easy one, but they baited you in. It turns out to be really hard, right?
Yeah, no, it's not too difficult. I should get above a 90, but...
Are they asking you, where, New Zealand cricket teams are located? What is sports geography? Tell me about this.
That's exactly what the whole, last month was. It's been learning about cricket, Australian, all that good stuff. I don't know.
Awesome. Here in the Lansing or East Lansing Okemos area, they had youth cricket. I wanted my kid to play, and they didn't. It ended up getting disbanded because there's a lot of population here from people that are from India, And you go up and down, Okemos Road, and you look at the Little League baseball fields, and in the summer, any given night, you'll see 20 guys out there playing cricket, like grown men. And I'm always like, one of these days I'm going to go out there and see if I can join those guys. But, word got out, like the Meridian Township Youth Rec League, they were going to have a cricket league. I'm like, dude, how cool is that? Who can grow up and say they played Little League cricket, right? But we had stuff going on. He was playing baseball, and I don't know, we didn't. He was real young, and we didn't end up doing it. I was kind of hoping that would be available every summer, and it didn't end up sticking. Hopefully that'll happen at some point. But anyway, hey, good luck with sports geography. All right, Caden?
I appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right, thanks a lot. Now let's go over here to the comments area and see what else we've got in terms of comments. We talked about Phil Parker already. Big Will says, how soon do you think Michigan State hires a defensive coordinator? There's some indications that looked like it was going to happen earlier this week. I don't know if there's a situation where one or two of the candidates are being vetted at this time. Not sure, but I don't have a lot of insight on when that could happen. But, Jimmy Lake's been out there. I don't know if he's being vetted or what's going on there, but that's internal, and I've not heard anything more about that. Action Jackson says, please talk about the locker room impact of bringing in $1 million superstars all the way down to preferred walk-ons who don't get paid education and what might be the unintended consequences. You know what? In this day and age of portal madness, and you've got true freshmen coming into various programs around the country that might be making $300,000, and then you've got preferred walk-ons that are out there grinding, and you got quarterbacks making what Matt Rule says is the open market value. I think he exaggerated that a little bit from what I'm hearing. But when you've got that internally in a locker room, how much do they talk? How much do people know what they're getting? I mean, there's players that start for Michigan State that didn't get anything, and they hear about incoming freshmen that are getting X number of dollars based on previous staff and decisions that were made. At some point when you hear those things, you're going to want something, right? Does that hurt camaraderie? As a head coach, being able to handle that is a big factor today. I know there's other colleges that are out there that have NIL plans that say if you come in and you become a starter, you get X amount. If you become all league, you get X amount. You're hearing about some of those things. Come in and you get paid for productivity. You don't get paid just to be on the roster. Michigan State had some players in last year's recruiting class that were paid to be on the roster. There's going to be a methods to that and an ongoing science to figure out the best way to handle those things. I will say this, two of the best teams in the country right now, from what I can see, that handle it the best internally are Alabama and Michigan. They have good players, and if you're good, then you get paid, not necessarily on the way in. I'm sure Alabama's paying people on the way in also, but those two teams have players playing hard, competing to win collisions for the team, 22 deep, 44 deep, 66 deep, three strings. They've got it going on pretty good right now. Michigan does, which still floors me because in the fall of 2020, that team quit on Harbaugh. And for him to turn that around, maybe with some help from the whole Stallions thing, but definitely with some help from that. But in terms of as much of an oddball character as that guy is, Blake Corum was talking about that. Who was the recruit that did an interview? Was it St. Brown for the Lions? Was talking about he was having an in-office meeting at the end of his official visit to Michigan, and Harbaugh didn't even pay attention to him. Just kind of zoned out. Just kind of went whatever that part of his personality is. And St. Brown's like, man, this guy's weird. St. Brown ended up committing to USC or whatever. And he was talking about that with Corum, and Corum kind of laughed and said, yeah, that's the way coach is sometimes. So for him to have that personality, but still be able to foster this team-oriented attitude that they have there, I don't have an explanation for it. I would need Lapchick and some of those sports psychologists to explain to me how that was doable and possible. But anyway, those two programs are in the Final Four, and they've been able to handle it. But you raise a good point. In this day and age of millionaires with walk-ons, getting those guys, getting the team in the ultimate team sport to play together, I don't have a good answer on how to do that. Bill Houston says, hope you're feeling better. Thanks for all you do. Thank you. Tom Helderman's here, MSU 66. Welcome back. Thanks, Tom. Stu Redmond says, breaking news, Michigan State will announce new president on Friday. Okay, I hope that turns out well. Brad Latch says, what's the over-under set on Oregon State players that follow Coach Smith to Michigan State? You know, I heard rumblings of like 20 or something like that. I'm guessing over-under is going to be 6. I'm just throwing that out there. That's from Mooresville, North Carolina. Kyle Priestley says, hey, I'm checking in from Lynchburg, Virginia, and also just getting over COVID and listening to you as I write a paper for my coaching philosophy class. Thanks, Kyle. Lynchburg. Is Liberty in Lynchburg? Anyway, coaching philosophy class. Good luck with that. And you can do a dissertation on what we just talked about. Karen says, Stu, is that accurate? Are you the president? Aiden Wood says, hello. We got a call from Aiden. We got a call from Caden. Just talked about Sissoko. Animation Brothers says, new president to be announced on Friday. Kevin Guskevich, the current chancellor at North Carolina Chapel Hill, will be announced as MSU president 8 a.m. Friday morning. Okay, that's interesting. We'll fasten your seatbelts, hold your breath. We'll see. Ben Clayson says John Smith at Michigan State is a disaster. Michigan State doesn't have even a bowl chance. Brilliant. Aiden Wood says, man, last night State's rebounding was horrendous as well. It was last night. Ben Clayson says MSU football can't compete with Smith. Bad move. Ben Clayson says, hire me as the coach. I played with Michael Jordan. Aiden Wood says, a lot of Michigan State's slow start is seemingly bad luck. We talked to Aiden about that a minute ago. I'm not going to say bad luck. I mean, the shooting, there's percentages and probabilities there that worked against them, but they got to start rebounding and making shots. And then they got to stay locked in on defense when they don't shoot well. SpartanMag 999 says, 31 games to get your stuff together, but you have to win enough games to make the tournament. That is true also. I think they will. You're right. Along the way, you can't be 500 much longer. That's a good point. Aiden Wood says they'll win enough games to make the tournament. For sure. SpartanMag 999 says, what is this Ben Klassen talking about? I agree. He's trolling. Okay, that's what it is. It's a weird kind of trolling. It wasn't like a Wolverine type of troll. But anyway, all right, let's go back over here to the mailbag questions. All right. We talked a little bit already about Courtney Hawkins, didn't we? Tim from Ypsilanti says, what needs to happen for men's basketball to be successful? We just talked about that. Got to shoot better. We just talked about the season statistics. Hogard, Akins, even Walker, Malik Hall, those 4 starters. I mean, Michigan State was one of the best shooting teams in the country last year. You assume that would have been strong again this year, even without Hauser. But for all 4 of those to be shooting well below 33%, if that doesn't change, they're going to keep losing games. Mark from Grand Rapids says, regarding the offensive line and guys in the portal, Spencer Brown, Kevin Whittington, Ethan Boyd, Gino Vandermark, Spencer Baldwin, he says, any indication that any of them will return? I've not seen any indication yet. Of course, Ethan Boyd being an East Lansing guy, I would think would be the most likely of the group who has the most upside potential to improve their performance with a new offensive line coach on board. I would think Boyd, athletic tackle, new coaching would be interesting. I think he continues on an upward trend. Vandermark and Wigginton, I think they're good, solid, wide bodies that move well. And, guys that are just getting into their man strength, I think those 2 would do well with a new offensive line coach coming in from Oregon State if they came back. I think it was Vandermark had an NIL deal with This Is Sparta. I'll have to ask around a little bit about what that's looking like. because he was with This Is Sparta, I would think he might have a better chance of coming back than others, possibly. New Jersey guy, they're going into the portal to see what's out there for them. It's hard to get good big men in the portal. So these guys that have started, that go into the portal, usually big men and offensive linemen are usually more inclined to stay put and not enter the portal. So you have guys like Vandermark, who's been a starter, as well as Brown and Baldwin. They might get decent action, people coming after them, because like I said, it's hard to find good people, good big men in the portal. Not that they're good, they've been starters, but they might get offered more than maybe they're worth. Young guys that still need to develop in some instances. Question 7, Existence is Pain is his name, from Parts Unknown. He's a subscriber over at SpartanMag.com. By the way, if you're not a subscriber, go to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. $1 for a month. Get in there, go to SpartanMag.com, Underground Bunker, get our coverage, our analysis as Michigan State recruiting really begins to heat up for Michigan State, with recruiting going on this weekend. Let me see if I can find this. Oh, is it on the other one? It's in my other one. Hold on a second. Talk recruiting here in a second. Got my notes in two different places. Before I do that. All right. I should have had this moved over. I'll tell you what. I'm just going to move this over. Hold on. Hold on. Gotta get things. See, if we had commercial breaks, I could do this during the commercial and it'd be all fine, but appreciate your patience. We're talking recruiting here in a second. I think that'll do it. All right. Excuse me. Recruiting about ready to heat up this weekend. This weekend, Michigan State official visits Nick Marsh, the wide receiver from River Rouge, 4-star receiver, important part of this class. He was at the Michigan State-Penn State game at Ford Field, decked out in Michigan State gear. Continues to be fired up about Michigan State. Michigan State's going to try to close that deal this weekend. Looks good for Michigan State there. Jaden Walker, the linebacker from Portage, he's visiting this weekend. Michigan State coaches and USC coaches were at his basketball game last night in Portage. He might visit USC. Interesting that USC has come in. Jaden Walker had been committed, I think, to Bowling Green. Michigan State flipped him, and now USC's coming after him, but State's got a solid chance to keep him. Those are two former commitments. Brady Pretzlaff, the linebacker from Gaylord. He's been... Hold on a second. Pretzlaff has been committed to Minnesota since, last summer. He's going to be visiting Michigan State this weekend, and things look pretty good for Michigan State with him. As I posted on Twitter earlier this week, he's the best linebacker from up north since the Bullas. Good, solid guy. After he committed to Minnesota, what was it? I took notes on him just out of curiosity, thinking he was going to Minnesota. 6'3", 215, Brady Pretzlaff. Good change of direction, good physicality, good pass drops, runs pretty well. Combination of change of direction and physicality puts him in that kind of that Joe Bocci category. You know, comparing him to the up north Bullas, he's bigger than Riley Bulla was at the same age. I like this Pretzlaff kid. Was committed to Minnesota. Now Michigan State can visit him this weekend. We'll see what happens. Justin Denson, defensive back commit from Pennsylvania. You know, I was watching some more of his film earlier today. 6 feet, 185, Kingston, Pennsylvania, number 34 player in Pennsylvania. He had offers from Penn State, Florida, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Florida State, Alabama. Committed to Michigan State July 4th. He also took official visits in June to Oklahoma and Florida. I'm looking at his film, and it look, you know, I gotta watch some more film. It looks okay. Those visits are some big time visits. He's hung with Michigan State. You know, Harlan Barnett kept those defensive back commitments warm, so he's visiting this weekend. I've not heard any more about other visits with him. He was a guy that was highly recruited previously. His film looks okay. He's coming in to visit this weekend. We'll see what happens there. Former Michigan State commitment. He's never decommitted. Running back commitment from Oregon State, Brandon Tullis from Frisco, Texas. Was watching his film also. Looks okay. You know, a guy that, you know, Oregon State's had a lot of success with their run game under Jonathan Smith. He committed to Oregon State. They've continued to recruit him. That's one thing about those Oregon State commitments. The commitments that they had that were not from the state of Oregon, but were from abroad, it would make sense that Smith and his staff would try to, you know, retain interest in them to get them to come to Michigan State. So a Texas kid had been committed to Oregon State. It makes sense that he would give Michigan State a look. He's given Michigan State a look this weekend. Michigan State's still in pretty good shape with Anthony Carey. You know, Carey from Tampa, Carrollwood. I think he's supposed to visit Georgia Tech this weekend. 4-star running back, was committed to Michigan State for a long time, decommitted because of the circumstances. Ranked number 293 in the country, number 40 in Florida. Running back, Tampa, Carrollwood. He's supposed to visit Michigan State the weekend of December 15th. He's supposed to visit Georgia Tech this weekend. It's looking like Michigan State, Georgia Tech, North Carolina State. A little bit surprised that no other schools have really come crashing after him. So Michigan State's got a chance to save him as a commitment. Carey's a guy that's got, I think, my notes on him, looking back at his film earlier this season and last year, in terms of jump cut quickness, he's excellent in that regard. One cut, lateral cut to the outside, one cut elusiveness. He mixes that with good speed, maybe very good speed, borderline home run speed, but that lateral cut with very good speed, great combination. Good balance down the sideline. I've not looked at their film this year, but in the spring of 2023 when they were playing, you know, they played tackle football in Florida in the spring. Their offense was kind of moving to like a two-back under center, you know, slow read Wake Forest type of offense. And he showed some toughness, taking on a safety a couple times last spring. He's not a guy that's going to bowl over an FBS linebacker, but he's elusive, has some speed and some physicality. So it's a good combination. Anthony Carey, Michigan State's going to try to close on him in the weeks ahead. You know, Michigan State, that's an interesting situation because, you know, Mel Tucker and Ephraim Reed were the guys that were recruiting him previously. Those guys are gone. So Michigan State has new coaches, and they've been able to maintain his interest. I would assume possibly because of what Oregon State's done as a run offense in the past, but Michigan State, with the new running backs coach, Keith Bonafa. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I got to find out more about that. I've not met him yet. But yeah, they've got Tullis coming in this weekend, previously committed to Oregon State, and maybe Anthony Carey the week after that. So they're trying to get some business done in that regard. So recruiting heating up right now. This weekend also Wyatt Hook, a tight end who had been committed to Oregon State previously, is now looking into Michigan State. 6'6", 230 from San Jose, California, Homestead High School. 3-star recruit number 107 in California. Official visit to Michigan State this weekend. Has offers from Michigan State, California, Colorado, Washington State, Oregon State. West Coast type of guy, but 6'6", nice size tight end from California. Had been committed to Oregon State. Now he's going to give Michigan State a look. So those are some of the guys coming in this weekend. Nick Marsh, Jaden Walker, Brady Pretzlaff, Justin Denson, Brandon Toulis. Might be Tullis. I got to find out about these pronunciations. There's a lot of new people on the radar, and I don't know how to pronounce all of them. Wyatt Hook also. So there could be more this weekend. Midweek, December 13th, Dinkins, the defensive lineman from Kentucky, transfer portal guy. He's supposed to visit Michigan State. December 16th, the wide receiver from Purdue, Abdul Rahman Yassin, originally from Walled Lake. He's going to be visiting Vanderbilt this weekend, and he's going to be visiting Michigan State the weekend of December 16th. As far as Rahman Yassin goes, he had 25 catches in 2023 for Purdue, 329 yards. He has 1 year of eligibility left. Michigan State offered him during the D'Antonio era at the end, but he ended up going to Purdue. Had some injuries. I don't think the word is he's never played more than 8 games in a season due to injuries. This year, it looked like he's having a breakthrough season. Against Syracuse, he had 10 catches, 114 yards. The next week, 4 catches, 62 yards against Wisconsin. The next week, 2 catches, 35 yards against Illinois, and then 1 catch against Iowa, injured, out for the year after 8 games. And he has offers from Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Washington State, South Carolina, and Minnesota. But an interesting one, local guy, might be wanting to come home. He has some ability. Like I said, 10 catches, 114 against Syracuse. Injuries have always been a problem. He's going to be visiting Michigan State the weekend of December 16th. He's visiting Vanderbilt this weekend. The following weekend, Anthony Carey, the running back, he's supposed to visit. Andre Brinston, defensive back from Tampa. Rustin Young from Hawaii. These are guys that Oregon State had commitments from in the past. They'll be coming in to visit as well. So and some others as that's just a handful of some of them that are taking a look at Michigan State. As far as others, the other 2 commitments for Michigan State defensive backs from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Jalen Thompson, Keyshawn Williams, they're coming in, official visit the weekend of December 15th as well. Jalen Thompson from Murfreesboro, 3-star, number 35 player in Tennessee. He's taking an official visit to Virginia Tech this weekend. It offers previously Ole Miss, Tennessee, Auburn, Michigan. Not sure how busy those schools are in, but those are some of the offers he attracted in the past. He and his teammate are also from Murfreesboro, Keyshawn Williams. Between Thompson, Williams, and Denson, those are 3 defensive backs that have stuck with Michigan State. Harlan Barnett has had a lot to do with keeping those guys warm for Michigan State. And I've not really detected that a lot of other schools have come in strong for those guys in the meantime. So I think Michigan State has a decent chance to keep those 3 as Michigan State continues to work to put their defensive staff together. I never put out a thing on Twitter today saying that this nonsense was going on. So as we wrap up the show, I'm going to go ahead and put that on now. Might not be able to from here. Let's see. Yes, I can. Hang with me for about 30 seconds while I do that. In the meantime, make sure you give us a like here on the channel and go over to SpartanMag.com and subscribe. We'd love to have you as a subscriber at SpartanMag.com. $1, try it for a month, trial run. We think you'll like it. It's a lot of fun. I might have overhyped it a little bit. I stole a line from Dave Revson. Apologize about that. Tweeted it out. So anyway, that's the update on recruiting. As far as others, Charlton, Lunieski, and Mercer. Lunieski, the 2 twins from Ohio. Mercer, number 28 player in Ohio, 6'5", 310, offensive tackle type. I think he's going to be visiting this weekend also. Both of them this weekend. They both have offers, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Pittsburgh, and so forth. But those two twins, they've been in contact with Michigan State and the new offensive line coach, and they're excited about him. They'll bring him in, take a look at him, and they're visiting this weekend. Solid chance that they remain part of the recruiting class. So Michigan State's trying to salvage this recruiting class. I put my barometer out there. If you can have a top 50 recruiting class in 3 weeks, that would be, in my opinion, salvaging a class that can be functional going forward and not be a hole in the program. And I think they got a good chance to avoid a class that's ranked in the 70s. And meanwhile, you have to bolster that, fortify that with work in the portal. And in the meantime, you got to play some portal defense on your own roster. Of course, Michigan State has 16 scholarship players in the portal right now. Spencer Brown, Brandon Baldwin, Wigginton, Vandermark, Boyd, Derek Harmon, Christian Fitzpatrick, Terrell Henry, Jerron Glover, Noah Kim, Caden Hauser, Sam Levitt, Darius Snow, Keyshawn Blackstock, plus earlier Jordan Simmons, Hank Pepper. So there's 16 of those. I think Michigan State, just guessing, I think they'd like to maybe try to keep 4 or 5 of those in. You can't coach air. You can't go and get players from the tennis team and throw them on the field. You need human beings. Michigan State is a little bit low on human beings. The new coaching rules for the transitional coaching rules, you can sign as many as you want as long as you're under 85 by next year. But that transfer portal, also known as the discard pile, there's some decent players out there, but there's a lot of discards. And in terms of overhaul in year one, it's difficult. They put that rule in when Lance Leipold was at Kansas because all of a sudden he took over a program with like 40 scholarship guys. And back then the rules stated you could only sign 25 or 30 or whatever. NCAA waived that for a new coach. You had 2 years where you can sign as many as you want. So Michigan State is in that window right now. But they're going through to find out who in the portal, stacks up nicely for them. And they're utilizing some of the research from the previous staff. There's one holdover, I think, from the previous staff. They're using some of the research that was done on, some of that. Because when you come in, you've got people, those are resources that are available to you. Who are your people? Who have you looked at scouting-wise? Who can we look at to add this team? So there's a lot of evaluation going on as Michigan State's roster gets overhauled. Just today we heard that Jake Velling, the tight end for Oregon State, entered the portal today. 6'4", 241, very good tight end. Had 29 catches this year for Oregon State, 15 yards per completion per catch, 8 touchdowns. I'd heard even before he went into the portal, Washington was in on him. The Wolverines were in on him. This is a nice tight end. I think Michigan State's going to have a solid shot to get him. I was just watching like the Oregon State-Oregon game. Oregon State ran, kind of, 2 tight end, hard outside zone counter boot, tight end wide open, and Uwe just kind of missed him. Uwe as a quarterback for Oregon State, functional, did some good things, but the accuracy was not always real good. I think it's 57% with accuracy. If he had been more accurate, I think that offense would have been even better. You could say that about any quarterback in the country, but the accuracy did kind of get a little bit, some of the things when you're hard run action, play action, you're just kind of a moving the chains type of offense. You need really good accuracy there. The best I've ever seen that type of offense execute, in my opinion, in recent vintage was Iowa when they had Banks as quarterback the year they went to the Orange Bowl and played USC with Pete Carroll and those guys. That was a great. They had the running back was Woods the running back then, but 2 tight ends, an inside zone, outside zone, and get you hard to the boundary on that stuff. Then counter boot, elusive quarterback, accurate. That was a handful. When that offense is running well, that's kind of what it reminds me of. But they would also spread it out. Oregon State would, and spread you out vertically, horizontally, and all that stuff too. In addition to some of the phone booth stuff, which was a tough changeup for Pac-12 teams. A really interesting, balanced offense at Oregon State. All right. So Velling's into people are going to the portal all the time. We've got this thing called the portal tracker. Noah Sprunger put that together for SpartanMag.com. Anytime someone of note goes into the portal and Michigan State offers or shows interest, we've got it there, the portal tracker at SpartanMag.com. Check it out because right now, Michigan State football roster management, roster assembly is everything. And there's different prongs. There's the high school prong, there's the portal prong, and there's portal defense prong. And there's going to be a lot of action going on in the weeks ahead. All right, Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights says, where do you see this staff standing with the current commitments? What is the word on the street on how the new staff is doing in reaching out to Michigan coaches and recruits? You know, they're busy one day at a time. You know, I heard last week that Jonathan Smith and one of his assistants, they were at West Bloomfield High School and Southfield A&T. And that's the only ones that I've heard about. I'm sure they've gone to others. So we've got our ear to the ground to find out where else they've been. And Jason Killip does a great job covering recruiting also as our recruiting anchor at SpartanMag.com. They're out there busy. They're meeting coaches. And it's one piece at a time. As far as the past, the current commitments, where there's the 8 commitments, I think they're in good shape with Marsh, good shape with Jaden Walker. Seem to be in good shape with the Lunieski twins and those defensive backs that Barnett's been recruiting. Seems like they're in decent shape with all those guys. You know, Jalen Thompson, Keyshawn Williams, Justin Denson. Have to wait and see what happens officially with Barnett and what impact that has. But those guys that are still committed to Michigan State, I think there's a solid chance they keep those. I think there's 8 of them for now, and then you add to that with some Oregon State commitments, and then you go out and try to flip some people like Brady Pretzlaff and some others. And, you know, Nick Marsh is a 4-star. Anthony Carey, a running back, is a 4-star. It might be a class with 2 4-stars and a lot of 3-stars. If you do that and you have a class of 20 guys, that's going to be a class that I think will break the top 50, maybe even a little bit better. All right. Eric in Saginaw says, what are the SpartanMag.com power ratings for Michigan fish as far as table fare goes, eating quality? Eric in Saginaw says, number 1, perch. Number 2, walleye. Number 3, bluegill. Number 4, whitefish. Number 5, crappie. Very interesting. I've never eaten crappie. I understand they've got a lot of crappie over at Lake Odessa. There's some ice fishing going on over there. One of these days, I'm going to venture over there and give that a shot. For me personally, walleye is number 1, also known in Ontario as pickerel. I've got a problem with that because they're not. Go to Ontario, they call them, that's pickerel. I'm like, that's not a pickerel, that's a walleye. They're like, no, you call it a walleye, we call it a pickerel. I'm like, okay, so what do you call an actual pickerel? Pickerel's a different fish. Walleye, number 1. Number 2, me personally, I like whitefish. Number 2 is in terms of Great Lakes table fare. Now, salmon, you know, I like salmon. If you get a good fresh Lake Michigan salmon or Atlantic salmon from Lake Ontario, might be a game changer there a little bit. I eat salmon. I've kind of acquired. It's not my favorite. It's good for you. You need to do it. But whitefish, go to Mackinac Island, whitefish, real deal. I like that. 3 is perch. Hey, nothing against the perch people. Perch is great. Every time I get perch, it's always breaded, so I've kind of had to stop eating perch because of the gluten thing, but I probably need to get back on the perch bandwagon. Perch is great. I just like walleye and whitefish better. Number 4, I'm just going to say any kind of whitefish dip. I know that's not fish necessarily. You're asking for a specific species. Whitefish dip, warmed, again, Mackinac Island. Can't go wrong. Underrated is smoked lake trout. I know lake trout is not the best table fare, but if you smoke it, it's a good thing. I'll take your word for it on the bluegill and crappie. That's kind of universal, especially bluegill around the country. But whitefish is specific to the cold water of the upper Great Lakes, and it does not pack and travel very well. So you have to eat it locally, and it's great. You got to keep an eye on how much of that you eat, though, I hear from people say. I don't know. Eric in Saginaw says, what's the over-under on how many high school recruits Michigan State signs for the 2024 class? He puts it at under over 15. I'm going to go over 15, just a hunch. Nolan in Grand Rapids says, Comp, have you done a deep dive into Brian Lindgren's offense? Brian Lindgren, offense coordinator at Oregon State, comes with Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. He says, what is your confidence level that we Spartan fans can be happy with the offense of the coming years? In the future, it can be good. It's going to be physical. 2 tight ends, sometimes 2 backs, under center. They go under center a lot more than any other teams in the country other than the military academies. There's some teams that go under center. You watch Alabama and Georgia, they get under center. Michigan gets under center. You're seeing more of people going back to that as a knuckleball against some of the 4-2-5 defenses. So physicality, zone, I've watched it, but memory. I think they do power and gap schemes and all that stuff. I mean, they're physical. They come after you. That offensive line coach is the real deal, and they run hard between the tackles and hard play action, boot to throw. They're balanced. They do a lot of it. Now, in order for it, like any offense, you got to execute and you have to have Jimmies and Joes, right? You can have the most dynamic, fancy offense in the world, but if you're not protecting and you don't have quarterbacks that can execute, it's not going to work. I mean, John L. Smith came in here in the early 2000s. They were spread, throwing back then when not a lot of teams were throwing, and that sounded exciting, but if you're throwing incompletions and going 3 and outs in 20 seconds, all of a sudden it doesn't look so good. Oregon State, they're pounding the rock, doing a real good job putting a hole in people, playing ball control against Washington and some of the things they've done. That looks good. But you're coming to a new program with new personnel. They looked good at Oregon State in year 5, year 6, however long Jonathan Smith was there. But year 1, when they were taking over a downtrodden program, it didn't look real great right away. You got to get it taught, get the scheme, get the recruit, strength, conditioning, all those things, and it'll take some time. So there's some time. I'm sure they'll go under center and they'll try to run the ball. And there'll be some times against some opponents they won't be able to run the ball. So it's going to take a couple of years. So do not expect don't expect Mouse Davis, Andre Ware pinball machine numbers right away, right? But Oregon State this year was number 5 in the Pac-12 in total offense, and there was a lot of good teams in the Pac-12. Number 2 in the Pac-12 in yards per rush at 5.1, and number 5 in the Pac-12 in yards per pass attempt. So heavy run game with a quarterback at Uwe whose accuracy came and went a little bit, but they were still number 5 in the Pac-12 in yards per pass attempt behind Oregon, USC, Washington, Arizona. And think about those quarterbacks at Oregon, USC, and Washington. Yards per pass attempt, you're probably not going to outproduce them. Arizona did a real good job with what they did in offense this year. Nice job at Oregon State right there with those guys. So deep dive, I've got to take another, continue to take closer looks at those, and we'll get into that as we get into the offseason. Right now, we're trying to cover roster acquisition and also this basketball team and hockey a little bit too. But I've watched Oregon State closely this year. I got to dive back in and watch and continue to watch it. Karen from Florida. We had Karen commenting at the live board a moment ago. Karen says, "Hi, Comp. My other questions have been asked. Any updates on the Central Michigan Stallions or the Michigan NCAA cheating investigations?" Thank you. It looks like Sparty JS responded to your question and says, "Not Comp, but go to the 11 Warriors forum." 11 Warriors is an Ohio State site. And he says this guy, Brohio, has done extensive research, and it's pretty fascinating. So I've not seen that, but I'll take Sparty JS's word for that. I've not heard anything more about the Stallions thing at Central Michigan. I don't know if there's going to be trouble at Central Michigan on that. A lot of that stuff has calmed down since the end of the the Big Ten suspension, and when Michigan was doing a lot of saber rattling about their lawyers and their attorneys. They're going to fight it. And they're going to mop the floor with the Big Ten's lawyers. And they were saying all that stuff. And then like a day later, Michigan was like, you know what? Never mind. We'll take the punishment, the initial punishment. So there is speculation that the NCAA said, we've got all these other things that haven't come out yet. So why don't you guys just sit down and shut up for a minute? And I think they did. But now, Michigan is acting like it's all going to blow over, and they're going, they're still playing. They're in the Final Four, and they're going to keep winning. And now, Harbaugh's the holy blissful martyr now, and he was wronged and all that stuff. But then you get the people saying, hey, Michigan, we proved that we're not cheating anymore, and we're still winning, so we're really the champions. We're not cheating anymore. I mean, that's like saying. It's like saying, okay, Martha Stewart is no longer getting insider Wall Street information, so no need for any punishment. Well, there was punishment. She went to jail. She wasn't doing it anymore. Leave her alone. OJ's not killing anybody anymore. Leave him alone. Is that too far? Is that too soon? Sorry about that. No, if you did it, if you committed the crime, you have to pay the price at some point. And right now, if NCAA wanted to come down on him right now, there would be like a 90-day appeals time, and they'd be able to still play. But I don't know. I mean, Michigan's pretty good, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of, if you're old enough, if you remember SMU with Craig James and Eric Dickerson, they were a very good team, arguably the best team in the country when they were juniors. And then when they were seniors, they were not eligible for the top 25 in the coaches poll, but they were in the AP. But it reminds me of that. It's like they were already had their penalty was going to come later, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what happens next, but I've not heard anything. But there were a lot of indications a couple weeks ago. There was a lot more smoke and fire to come, but I've not heard anything. You're asking me if there's any rumblings beneath the surface. I've not heard anything, but it's going to be fascinating to watch to see what happens. And as I tweeted on Saturday or Sunday when the college football playoff rankings or matchups came out, and I think it was Reese Davis was interviewing Harbaugh, and he asked him all a couple questions here and there, and I tweeted out the question that was not asked is, Coach Harbaugh, are you concerned that these wins and these championships that you've won thus far in the Big Ten and anything you might win in the future, are you concerned that those wins are going to be stripped from the University of Michigan in the future? He would have played dumb and said, no, we're a good team. We're just doing what we could do. He'd have some dumb answer. But that's a question that has to be asked. Are you concerned that these wins are going to be stripped in the future? Was not asked. All right, question 13 from Gladwin. Jim, are you surprised by the schools offering our portal offensive linemen? Does this speak more to other teams' need for linemen or more about the lack of development at Michigan State the last 4 years? You know what? I've got to look into that. I've heard some of the offers that are out there. And like I said, it's hard to find good big men in the portal. And sometimes at the offensive line position, you will get more interest than maybe your talents should yield. For instance, after Michigan State, the 2021 season with Kenneth Walker, Michigan State went into the portal and they got Brian Green, I think was his name, for 1 year out of Washington State. Solid player, but I went back and watched his film his last year at Washington State, and he was kind of like a part-time starter. He was kind of their sixth or seventh man. He goes into the portal, Michigan State goes and gets him. Michigan State needed a little bit more depth of a guy that could play guard or center. Comes to Michigan State and, functioned a little bit during the 5-7 season. But that's a guy that was not starting at Washington State, goes into the portal, and the team that a few months earlier had produced Kenneth Walker and went 11-2 wanted him. Not a great player, was not great at Washington State, but Michigan State wanted him. Hard to get good big men in the portal. So anyone with any kind of ability theoretically is going to get I would think would attract some offers. I'm not up to speed on the offers that Michigan State's offensive linemen are getting at this point. Maybe Noah can send me some information on that. But you raise a good question, and I'm not up to speed on that at this point. Pat from Tampa via St. Clair Shore says, Jim, outside of the reported interest in Childs, do you see the Michigan State quarterback situation ending up? How do I see it ending up to start the 2024 season? Thanks, Pat from Tampa via St. Clair Shores. Michigan State's going to be in there with Childs whenever that thing becomes official, but that's only one scholarship quarterback, right? I would assume Michigan State will sign another one, I would think. High school guy. But you raise a great question because Michigan State has, three outgoing scholarship quarterbacks into the portal right now. Jonathan Smith had a meeting with Caton Hauser before and after he entered the portal. That sounds to me like Michigan State would like to keep him in some regard. You go into a season with only one scholarship quarterback, and if it's Childs and he's a true sophomore, not ideal. So you have to get some quarterbacks from somewhere. The quarterback from Toledo, Finn, I think is his name, originally from Cass Tech. He's in the portal. You bring that guy in. Do you bring in? Dude, I don't know. This is new territory. And the portal, in my opinion, is pretty much a disaster for college football. But It's also interesting as Michigan State tries to piece this thing together, but I don't have the answer for that. Question 16, Solo from Westland says, have you watched any film of the new players Michigan State has offered in high school and or the portal? Do any of these offers stick out to you as guys you'd really like to see become Spartans? You know, I mentioned the running back who's committed to Oregon State. He looks all right. The tight end from California, I've not watched him yet. I suspect he's pretty good, right? I've not watched Brinson yet. I've not watched Rustin Young yet. These are things I have to do. It's been a busy couple of weeks. I've not watched Wyatt Hook yet. Pretzlaff is the one that they're trying to flip from Minnesota. That's a guy that I think would fit nicely at Michigan State. I've not watched. There's a number of guys I gotta keep an eye on. The wide receivers. I looked at Yassine a little bit. The injury thing is a question. Terrell Harris, the wide receiver from Kent State, from LaGrange, Illinois, is interesting. Velling, I've seen him quite a bit. He's in the portal. Michigan State's going to be going after him. Productive, excellent, all around tight end. I've not looked at the Luke Newman offer from Michigan State, offensive lineman from Holy Cross, originally from Brother Rice High School, 6'4", 310. 3-time All-League in the Patriot League. He's not announced that he visits yet, not watched him yet. I've not watched Thor Griffith, defensive tackle from Harvard. Several schools are coming after him. There's Anthony Johnson, defensive tackle, originally from the city of Pittsburgh, signed with Bowling Green, then transferred to Youngstown State, 6'3", 295. Michigan State needs defensive tackles. This guy had 4 sacks as a defensive tackle this season. Offers from Rutgers, Illinois, Wisconsin. Seen him a little bit. I've got to watch him more closely. The guy from Kentucky, Jamarius Dinkin, 6'5", 280. 2 years of eligibility left. Sometimes I talk too fast and don't hit all of the consonants. You can tell I was not a broadcast major. My apologies. Originally from Columbus, Ohio. 19 tackles last year for Kentucky. 19 tackles in 23 career games. So kind of a second string type of guy. Michigan State offered December 5th. He has offers from Purdue, Vanderbilt, Boston College. He's supposed to be visiting pretty soon. That I've not watched him yet, but that sounds like some of the defensive tackles they brought in last year. Again, hard to get good big men in the portal. One guy that looks pretty good is Samuel Okunlola, Pittsburgh Panthers, 6'4", 245, originally from Brockton, Massachusetts, Thayer Academy. Related to Samson Okunlola, also the cousin of current Michigan State tight end Faleye from Norfolk State, Adamola Faleye. Okunlola's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. In 2023, 18 tackles, 5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. That's what I'm talking about. 5 sacks in 2023. I'm not sure why he's in the portal, but he's leaving Pittsburgh. Michigan State offered December 5th. Florida State's in there as well. That's a guy that Michigan State recruited and offered back in May of 2021 when they were also going after Samson Okunlola. He had official visits to Georgia, Virginia, and Colorado before he became a Pitt Panther. But he's out there. Michigan State's in on him a little bit. They need defensive linemen. They're short on defensive tackles, short on linebackers. And in this roster, they're short in a lot of areas, but the portal's going to be busy for some of those mature bodies that are not teenagers. Stu Fester says, when do you expect Michigan State to announce its complete football staff? And who do you expect to fill the defensive staff positions? There's still a lot of talk about, you got to wait for the defensive coordinator. Once the coordinator is filled, then you get a linebackers coach, then you figure out what's going on at safety. Jimmy Lake's a guy that's been talked about. Is he being vetted at this point? I'm not sure. Who else is on there? I don't know. You'd have to know what's going on in Jonathan Smith's head, and that's tight war room information. Other coaches that are out there, I've heard some names. I'll keep those to myself right now because it's kind of quiet. Harlan Barnett's under consideration, I assume, as like a safeties coach. He's still waiting to see what his role is going to be. He's been invited to stay, but not sure what the role is, and that's what he's told the players. So he's still waiting. Courtney Hawkins at wide receiver, I would expect that to become, the indications I had was that was probably going to be happening at some point. I don't know what's going on there. I know he had some other offers from some big-time schools, contingent postseason. So maybe there's some other negotiations going on. Stu Fester says, have you met Jonathan Smith yet? What are your impressions? If so, does he have a Great Lakes favorite yet? If not, does he have an appearance coming up? I've not met him yet because I had COVID the week that he was introduced as head coach, so I didn't go over there and bother meeting people and all that stuff, even though I was told that I was no longer contagious. I was past the 5-day quarantine mark at that point, but I still didn't want to go over there. I was still coughing and stuff. They didn't need me over there, so I didn't meet him. I'll meet him at some point. Look forward to it. But Great Lakes, I've not heard if he's got a Great Lakes preference yet. That'll be interesting. He'll probably be a Lake Michigan guy. You know, Izzo grew up a Lake Superior guy, but he became a Lake Michigan guy. You know how that goes. Lake Michigan's pretty beautiful, right? I think we're about done. There's some other questions here, but I think we've covered them all. We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Let me go over here to the comments area. If you're joining us late, come back around, circle back. You can get it on demand, stream it that way. Let's go over here to the comments area before we wrap it up. We talked to Carol about Matt Sissoko's defense. Thanks to Noah Sprunger, it looks like he's handling some trolls. Make the best of what's around says, I have never seen Jonathan Smith and Comp in the same place at the same time. That's true. I was not there for the press conference. Jonah Wilson says, thanks for the answers, Comp. Sorry I got disconnected. Good to hear from Jonah. Sea-Dog says, I sure hope the Board of Trustees don't chase away another great president. Sea-Dog says, Tucker leaving Michigan State is going to be the best thing that's happened to Michigan State in years. Spartan AG 999 says that 3-ball that got wiped off the board for us last night because of a foul on Wisconsin was baffling. I agree. You know, that one could have been a little bit of a game changer. Michigan State was trying to hang in it. And the three-pointer from Holloman had cut it to 61-53 with 5 minutes to go, had cut it to 8, and Michigan State should have retained possession. With another three-pointer, could have cut it to 5 and changed the game. They wiped that off the board when they look at it on replay and they realize that the contact and the foul was before the shot release. Like Conan Dyke mentioned this in SpartanMag, VCast last night. He says, so if you're playing defense and you see that Sean Respert's coming open and right before he gets a shot off, you just go ahead and give somebody a Ric Flair chop across the face, across the chest, over on the side so that you get a foul before the shot's off. If you're under the bonus, they just get an inbound play, no free throws. To go to a replay to see when the foul happened. I mean, 50 plus years on the planet watching basketball my whole life. It doesn't happen very often, but that's supposed to count and you get possession. It doesn't happen very often, but that's the way it's always been in the history of Peach basketball. Maybe not in all of history, but through my lifetime. Hey, Wisconsin was the better team to deserve to win last night, but that was intrusive. Let's go to the film video to take away something that's always been called a certain way. And that was big. Would have cut it to 8, and you get the ball 5 minutes to go. But I agree with you on that. That was overly over officiating. But they got to look at the film. I guess looking at the film all the time. I don't know. Spartan Ag 999 says, all any team has to do is put pressure on Matty when he has the ball down low in the post, and it seems like he panics. I don't disagree with that. He's still, he's got some decent skill when he has room and has time, but in terms of reading defense, it's the first time he's ever been double teamed. He's never been double teamed before. So that'll be new for him. Mr. Bowman says, we suck so bad. Mr. Bowman says, I like the Fears kid. Fears came in with those 2 empty possessions when Walker was sitting. I mentioned the one where they were double teaming A.J. Hogarth as he tried to back down and got it over to Fears, and Fears drove and did the alley-oop to Cooper, and Cooper was not allowed to jump because they jump into you, and there's with the Wisconsin wrestling stuff, did a good job on that. and they broke up that one on Fears. But Fears, those two back-to-back empty sets during that 12-2 run. One possession prior to that, Michigan State ran it was a baseline inbound play, and they ran screen the screener for Fears, came off, had an opening into the lane, floater, and missed. And it was a nice play. It was a nice shot. In the future, Fears is going to be making a lot of those. Interesting that they went to Fears on a screen the screener on that play, on a baseline inbound play, while Walker was recuperating, resting on the bench. Good play, good shot, didn't make it, but I hear what you're saying about Fears. But back-to-back plays there by Fears, empty possessions. I don't argue with either play. It just didn't work out. Spunky 181 says, what time did this start? It started at about 3:15. Sorry you're late. Apologize about that. People asking about Aiden Childs. Got to get in the portal first, and we'll see what happens there. Looks like we got some sort of advertising bot that I just got rid of. Alex James says, basketball looks like number 4 to first 4. I know it's shameful to get upset with Izzo, but man alive, there's too much talent to be middling team. There's a lot of talent, but they're all, there's not a lot Izzo could do when Akins, Childs, and Hall are shooting like they are. All he can do as a coach is set up plays for guys to get shots. B-Ram 1990 says, what do you think about state basketball lineup? Walker at point guard, Akins shooting guard, AJ off the bench. Starting lineups, they have to do something to try to get rid of these slow starts. The slow start, part of it was due to defense giving up 3 3-pointers early. One, they just allowed Kroll, Sissoko just backed way off and invited him to shoot. That looked like that was premeditated. That was game plan stuff. Let him shoot. He made that one. The other one was a ball screen to the boundary, and then Akins goes over to honor the center, but then gets back to his guy, and they leave him wide open. Made the 3, and then the other one, Hepburn was the other one, going underneath the screen on that one. So they make 3 3-pointers early. It's 9-2. I'm not sure changing the starting lineup would alter that, but there's no question when you're losing, that's something Izzo will do. That's something any coach will do. Change the starting lineup, try to get something going that way. So you're asking about Akins, the shooting guard, and AJ off the bench. If you want AJ off the bench, I think AJ Hogard played real well last night. Otherwise, they would have lost by more. If that AJ Hogard plays against Arizona, they beat Arizona. I thought he was strong on defense. I thought he was strong with the pass game. Left him open for some open shots, hit a couple of them, including during that run when Michigan State brought it back to within 2 or 3 midway through the second half, when Michigan State had 5 3-pointers in the first 9 minutes of the second half, 3 by Walker, 2 by Hogard. So Hogard played plus basketball last night. Akins is the guy that's the question. Do you start Fears instead of Akins? Do you start Holloman instead of Akins? Do you do that just to try to get him to settle down? Akins, I don't think Akins is an excellent athlete who's got good shooting ability in the past. He's gotten cold this year. Defense should be good when he's tuned in. Akins, with the drive, with the ball in his hands, the basketball IQ is not great. That's just the way some people are. But this team cannot be a top 20 team unless Jaden Akins, as a wing guard, is shooting 40+% from 3. That has to be part of the deal. Instead, he's at 27, and this team cannot be good if he's 27% shooter. Unless, Fears or Holloman comes around, which you're not going to get that kind of shooting out of them. Your shooting guard has to be able to shoot in pretty much any offense, especially this offense that does not have a stretch 4. Like Hauser, busting at 45% from 3. Hall is supposed to be able to do that, but he's shooting in the teens. So maybe Hall has the ability to be a good stretch 4. And I said coming into the season, we would be monitoring that all season. Can Malik Hall take strides toward becoming a 40+% 3-point shooter to give Michigan State's offense the stretch 4 shooting ability it needs for all of the other screening and geometry to work together? It's symbiotic, all this stuff. I don't care what plays you're running or who your coach is or what your structure is. If your stretch 4, who a lot of your offense needs that, if he's going to shoot 18% from 3 and your shooting guard is going to shoot 27% from 3, you got a problem. If that's going to happen, you better be great with defense and rebounding. And Michigan State's pretty good on defense, and sometimes it gets haywire, and the rebounding has not been good. You add it up, you're 4-4. Those two guys have got to shoot. What do we have here? Let me check something. Sorry I'm late getting to this. I've got to find something. Wait a minute, what's this? Wait, oh, there it is. There we go. Hey, we got Super Chat contribution from BRAM1990 saying, thanks for what you do. Thank you, BRAM. We really appreciate that. Thanks for your contribution to the tip jar. Wishing you the merriest, the merriest, the merriest. Thank you, BRAM1990. Spunky181 says, Ma, meatloaf. Earl Menery says, basketball is beginning to look like football. I wouldn't go that far just yet. There's still time. Now, last year, this time when they were 5-4 and struggling, like I said, I continue to say they've got a chance to be a Sweet 16 team. And people say, Comparoni, you're crazy. This is not a Sweet 16 team. And then in March, what were they? Sweet 16 team. I'm not saying that yet because those two guys have to shoot. And then Hogard, never been a great shooter, but last year he was a pretty good shooter. Good enough. He needs to take that back up also. He played well last night. The Dylan and Dylan show, he says, I cover Brady Pretzlaff in Gaylord. Dylan. You know, I wanted to go up and watch Gaylord play this year. I've never seen a high school football game up north before. And this summer, I've got some in-laws up north, and my sister lives up there. I got a sister in Sheboygan. And they're like, you coming up this fall? I'm like, you know what? There's a linebacker in Gaylord. But the Tucker staff didn't recruit him. So I wanted to go watch him anyway. And then once the crap hit the fan with Tucker getting fired, I didn't hear anything about, we didn't know who the coach was going to be. But I thought about going up there and watching him because I thought there's a chance Michigan State might circle back to him. And I wish I would have, just because I wanted to go up there and watch Gaylord play. You know, right around the time the leaves are changing, like late September. Should have done it. And Dylan and Dylan show, you probably saw him and you probably had a good time with it. So good on you. I should have done it anyway. Satchmo Jones says, somebody get Jim something to drink. Dry in East Lansing after that Wisconsin game. Not a bad idea. Ernest Schaefer says, do you think the new president might have to sign off on Jimmy Lake? I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. The Dylan and Dylan show says, I'll say Mel and the staff drop the ball and Pretzlaff. I don't disagree. Spunky181 says, kind of worried if Jimmy Lake waits till January to join the staff. That tweet said he would. There was a tweet that came out that said he'd probably stay with the Rams if he becomes coordinator. January, I mean, he would miss out. He could probably still do both because he's an assistant head coach with the Rams. I don't know how laborious that is day to day. I don't know how demanding that is for the Rams. They've got, there's so many NFL coaches. He's not a coordinator there. I would think that he would have time to review film and get involved with even offers and such from a remote location. When Nick Saban was hired as head coach in December of 1994, he stayed with the Cleveland Browns as coordinator for the remainder of the Browns season. I think the Browns lost in the divisional playoff. Belichick was head coach at the time. So he was still doing Michigan State head coaching duties from Cleveland while he finished the season with the Browns. Now, the NFL season goes longer on the calendar now than it did then. I agree with you. That would kind of suck for Michigan State a little bit if that happens, but I'm not sure it's as debilitating as you might think. Ernest Schaefer says, do portal visits count against the visit limit for high school recruits? That's a great question because with the transitional rules, you're allowed to bring in you can bring in 90 guys as long as you get down to 85 by next fall. Sean Callahan, the On3 publisher for Huskers Online, the On3 Nebraska site, he said Nebraska had 105 scholarship guys last December. got it down to 85 later. You can bring in 105 guys. It's not easy to get quality out of the portal. The top of the food chain can get one or two good players. Georgia, Alabama, they can get one or two or three. But, if you're trying to rebuild a program like Michigan State with big numbers out of the portal, it's tough to find value in the discard pile. There's a few. But theoretically, you can bring in 40 high school kids, 60 guys from the portal, have 100 on scholarship. As long as you get down to 85 and tell 15 others we don't want you, and then you've got 40 guys or 50 guys from the previous staff. If you've got the money, you can tell all 50, you're not with us, but you can stay here at Michigan State on scholarship. Now that's expensive because you got to pay for all of those. But the transitional rule, as I understand it, is you can move existing players off of your 85 and still pay them. Of course, you got to pay for them, which budgetary concerns are always a concern. I'm exaggerating the numbers, but something I do not know about is what you ask and whether there's a limit on number of visits. I think, to answer your question, portal visits do not count as high school visits. And you get a portal commitment, they don't sign anything. So until they enroll, you don't have them. And in the case of, what was the guy's name? Terry Roberts. He was a second-string defensive back from Iowa, transferred to Miami, played spring football in Miami as an enrolled student at Miami, then left Miami and transferred to Michigan State. I think he lasted a couple weeks. I don't think he ever got in the field. But you talk about total free agency, you can commit as a portal transfer right now, and you're not. If a guy transferred right now, who are some of the guys? Was it Keyshawn Blackstock? There was the other guy. Who was the offensive line transfer from Central Oklahoma a couple of years ago? Jarrett Horst. Michigan State got a commitment from him as a transfer in January, but he had to finish school at wherever he was, Central Arkansas or whatever it was. And then that summer, they had to wait for him to enroll in August. And all the way from January to August, Michigan State had to continue to recruit him because Oklahoma came in late trying to get him. Because you don't sign anything as a transfer. Until you enroll, you're free game. Tullis. Thank you. LFG tells me it's Tullis, not Tullis. Tullis. Like Archie Tullis. Remember Archie Tullis? Detroit Mercy guard. He played in the state championship, state semifinals against some friends of mine. Anyway, Ernest Schaefer, Traverse City Central, has sent linebackers to Michigan and Notre Dame, haven't they? Yeah, they have. You're right. I might have overstated it a little bit, but it's a good point. I think we're all done here. Crappie is good, says Satchmo Jones. Satchmo Jones says, only ate crappie once and had a wow. What kind of fish is that response? Yeah, I might have to look into crappie. Yeah, whitefish do not play as well on the road. All right. Yeah, the Aiden Childs thing, he's got to get into the portal officially before. I've heard a lot about Aiden Childs, okay? And a lot is very, very concrete. And going to visit this weekend, whatever. There's a lot of stuff that you hear that you can't say because then it could get into the tampering category. So I'll leave it at that. All right. We are Dr. Nettie. Appreciate that. All right. Okay. Hey, we're going to wrap it up. It's 5:30. You guys got to get home from work safely. It's dark out in Michigan now. It's been dark on the East Coast for a long time. Those of you on the West Coast, I'm jealous. You have some daylight left. Those of you in Naples, Florida, I'm jealous for various reasons. Anyway, appreciate all the the comments and all the support. And we'll be back soon with another edition of Spartan Mag Live soon. In the meantime, go to SpartanMag.com. Got all the conversation all the time with Underground Bunker Message Board and continuing coverage of Michigan State's portal situation and recruiting situation. SpartanMag.com. Become a subscriber, $1 per month. You will love it. We'll see you later. Everybody else, have a good time. Be good. Be nice to one another. We'll see you soon.